Chapter 81. Hunting down the lawbreaker killer. Blanco was astonished, gritted his teeth, and rushed into the opera house with Bai Lin. He rushed to the backstage in 3 steps. As soon as he opened the door, he saw the aura who was in charge of bringing the secret gun into the backstage just now. He fell to the ground clutching his arms, howling in pain. Blanco rushed forward, but heard a gunshot from the side door leading to the corridor in the backstage. Blanco rolled on the ground and narrowly escaped the gunshot. He raised his hand and cast a stun spell, but when the opponent missed a hit, he turned and ran. The gun was taken away. The injured aura said painfully, clutching the bullet hole in his right arm. "Send him to the hospital quickly, I'll meet this killer." Bai Lin gritted his teeth and chased after him. In the dark corridor came the sound of the other party's away footsteps. Bai Lin gave himself a silent, and quickly chased after him. The other party went up the stairs along the corridor, and Bai Lin followed closely. Suddenly there was a warning sign, and he quickly leaned against the dark place. Another gunshot was fired from above, and the bullet shot into the steps of the stairs. If Bai Lin didn't hide, he might be dead. Shot in his head. The shadow dissipates. Bai Lin turned himself into a black shadow, and chased after him against the corner of the wall. Bai Lin's physical fitness is very good, and his strength is far beyond ordinary people, but the opponent is holding a rifle more than 1 meter long and wearing the anti-magic armor of the spellbreaker. He can't run against Bai Lin at all. Soon he saw the opponent's figure. Bai Lin subconsciously felt that it was a young woman with a thin body, no more than 165 centimeters in height, carrying a broomstick box not much shorter than her on her back, and holding a strange revolver in one hand. Bai Lin played a game called Final Fantasy VIII in his previous life, in which the male protagonist had a strangely shaped gun sword. The barrel of a large caliber revolver extended into a long sword, which could be used for chopping and can shoot. The killer's revolver was not that exaggerated, it just protruded about 20 centimeters from the lower mouth of the barrel, forming a dagger, but the way the gun was held made Bai Lin doubt how to use the dagger. But now is obviously not the time for Bai Lin to worry about the other party's poor use of the dagger. The other party turned around and shot again. It was a failure, pointing out that the killer bought a few tenths of a second more. The 4th shot. Bai Lin counted silently in his heart. This revolver should have 6 bullets. After shooting, Bai Lin didn't believe that this killer could be like the gunslinger Roland in the Dark Tower, reloading directly in the air. The revolver cannot be ejected. Cartridge case, it is troublesome to pour out the cartridge case and reload. Shenfeng Wuying. Bai Lin cast a magic strike spell on the killer in the dark. Last time in Cairo, the action Captain Caesar was wearing rather bulky armor, and this killer obviously traveled lightly. His body was more sensitive but his defense was weak. It must not be that strong. Bai Lin plans to give it a try. The killer suddenly flew up and stepped on the wall of the corridor, and caught the wind blade of the God's Edge curse with the short revolver in his hand. The wind blade was easily crushed by the short revolver like paper. "Okay, I've practiced." Although he was hostile, Bai Lin still admired that the other party's martial arts are very good, not inferior to his own. At this time, the killer had already fled to the window on the 2nd floor facing outwards. Bai Lin waved his hand and shot a shadow arrow. The killer turned around and fired a shot. The bullet collided with the shadow arrow, a small explosion occurred, and then the shadow arrow disappeared without a trace. However, the bullet continued to fly, passing by Bai Lin's side. The killer flew up, smashed the window on the 2nd floor, and fell towards the street outside. Bai Lin chased after him, just in time to see a ferocious and strong animal coming out from the dark corner of the street, which seemed to be a sphinx from Egypt. Just in time to catch the falling killer, the killer adjusted his posture and rode the sphinx to prepare to walk away. Bai Lin jumped out of the window without saying a word, and summoned Suifeng by the way. Suifeng's strong body also caught the falling Bai Lin. Said, "You are the only one who has a mount? Labor and capital also have one. Shadow Demon." Suifeng's pace became faster and the distance between the 2 mounts was getting closer and closer. Bai Lin thought in his heart that you are immune to magic, but your cat doesn't have it. Facing the hind legs of the sphinx, it summoned the Shadow Demon. Who knew that the other party was quite astute? At the moment Bai Lin yelled the spell, he immediately grabbed the hair on the sphinx's neck, causing the sphinx to jump onto the roof of a nearby shop, just dodging Bai Lin's call of Shadow Demon. But what the killer didn't expect was that the Shadow Demon is a level 6 summoning technique, and it is a shadow creature with life. Although Bai Lin has always used it as a black magic curse before, with the increase of Bai Lin's magic power, he is proficient in it. These shadow energy creatures already have some spirituality. Although they were quickly avoided by the Sphinx, the shadow demon followed closely, with a posture that would not stop pestering you. The killer was condescending on the roof of the shop, and he shot 2 slaps at Swafeng. Swafeng's combat intuition was also very keen. The moment the killer raised the gun, he had suddenly changed direction and avoided the gunshots. So far, all 6 bullets on the killer's revolver have been fired, and Bai Lin also flies up on the snow wind and jumps onto the roof. Bai Lin didn't give the other party a chance to take bullets, and rode Swafeng roaring forward, drawing out his jade-handled dragon sword in his hand, and with the momentum of Swafeng's charge, he slashed at the killer's neck with his sword. According to the killer at close range, it is indeed a girl's figure. Although she does not have full body armor like the Caesar I met in Cairo, she also uses hoods, gloves, soft armor, etc. to cover her whole body tightly, without revealing with a little skin and wearing black goggles on her face. Bai Lin even doubted whether she could see at night. The killer held Bai Lin's sword with the blade very dangerously, but Bai Lin's strength is amazing, and the jade-handled dragon is indeed a sword that has been passed down for thousands of years. A small gap. Bai Lin felt that the other party trembled obviously, and seemed to be very distressed that the gun blade was broken out of the gap, but Bai Lin didn't get used to her. He couldn't beat Caesar, who was covered in iron bumps and labor, and management couldn't deal with you. Bai Lin shook out a sword flower, the snow wind under his crotch also bit into the Sphinx. Bai Lin simply flew up, and the sword attacked the killer's vitals. The killer was quite agile. Although his moves were a bit wild, it was not easy for Bai Lin to take her down with 1 or 2 moves. The snow wind pushed and bit the Sphinx, and the killer was thrown from the back of the Sphinx and swayed from side to side. At this time, the shadow fiend had already climbed over and wrapped around the Sphinx's hind legs. The Sphinx staggered, was pushed down by the snow wind, and rolled off the roof, and the killer was forced to jump off. Chapter 82. The female killer jumped off the lion's back, just in time to meet Bai Lin's sword edge, and frantically blocked and retreated. The jade-handled dragon left a jagged gap on the blade of the spear, and the killer was extremely anxious. Bai Lin made frequent moves. He swiped away the female killer's spear blade with a sword, and slashed back on her calf. The skin and flesh he thought didn't happen. The sword seemed to slash on a metal product, and there was a crisp sound. Not the human body. Bai Lin's sword move faltered, and the female assassin took the opportunity to counterattack and rushed to Bai Lin's body. The blade of the gun pierced Bai Lin's chest. Bai Lin was forced to change his moves, switching from attacking to defending. Think about countermeasures. Bai Lin's heart was pounding like lightning, and he thought of many problems. The first one was the existence of lawbreakers, which seemed to have existed since ancient times, but if they were all as fierce as Caesar or the female killer in front of him, how many wizards would be able to pass them by? It shouldn't be so unknown. The weapons and armor of the second lawbreaker should be extremely precious, otherwise the female assassin can destroy the guns after the assassination, or make the secret text invalid, and can be discarded or directly operate away, and if the secret text guns can be mass-produced, and those who hate wizards have already waged war, and wizards are at a disadvantage. To sum up, the secret text gun should have been manufactured only in recent years, and it took a lot of resources. Each gun is the supreme treasure of the Lawbreakers Association, so the 2 swords clashed just now, and the opponent felt so distressed. With a plan in mind, Bai Lin turned his sword and slashed heavily at the female killer's shoulder. Seeing that Bai Lin's sword was so fierce, the female killer didn't dare to raise the blade of the gun and could only dodge to one side, but Bai Lin's target was not her shoulder at all, but the flying broom box she was carrying on her back. This sword cut off the balsa wooden broom box directly. The secret text 98K inside was exposed. The female killer was obviously taken aback, but Bai Lin was merciless, sword after sword, not killing the female killer, but specializing in broom boxes, as if he wanted to destroy the secret text 98K. The female killer practiced dodging, but Bai Lin still slashed the body of the gun a few times. The female killer shouted coquettishly, "How dare you damage the holy gun? Don't tell me, you don't know if you don't speak." The voice is clear and sweet, obviously it is a girl under 20 years old. "What holy gun? It's just a murder weapon," Bai Lin said coldly. "You black wizards are not considered human." The female killer cursed as she retreated. At this time, in the cat-dog battle over there, the Sphinx was against Swafeng, but Swafeng fell into a disadvantage. At level 6, when the energy of the shadow demon is slowly disappearing, Swafeng is no longer the opponent of the Sphinx. The Sphinx slapped Swafeng away, turned around and jumped onto the roof. The female killer just turned over, sat on the back of the lion, and fled quickly. Swafeng got up. The injury was not a serious injury, but Swafeng hurt his self-esteem. Bai Lin waved. Swafeng jumped over. Bai Lin pointed at the back of the female killer and said, "Catch up. I will avenge you." With a shake of spirit, Swafeng jumped and chased after them. The two of them, one in front of the other and the beast in the back, galloped on the street in the early morning. Suddenly, the female killer made a sharp turn, and Bai Lin realized that they had chased to the exit of Charles Street. An aura was guarding the exit. Seeing the female assassin rushing over, he quickly pulled out his wand, and said "Faint" to the female assassin, but the female assassin took out a silver dart from her bosom, and it flew. Come on, the aura's magic energy hits the dart, and it is like an electric current being absorbed by a lightning rod. The magic energy is absorbed by the dart and reflected on the aura. Knocked down to the ground, the female killer swaggered past him. Bai Lin didn't care about the auras on the ground, and chased after the female killer. They rushed out of Charles Avenue and came to the streets of Paris. After a fast pursuit, Bai Lin blocked the female killer into a dead end. "Who the hell are you?" Bai Lin said viciously. "You dark wizard's life and death enemy." The female killer replied viciously. Bai Lin spread his hands and said, "Actually, I have never used black magic to harm ordinary people. On the contrary, I have eliminated many Death Eaters. You haven't done it, it doesn't mean other people haven't done it, such as Ross Delmo, full name of Elder Ross, and Wolf, I owe this leg to them." The female killer said, tearing it apart. A trouser leg that had been cut by Bai Lin turned out to be a silver mechanical structure inside. "Are you a muggle injured by a wizard?" Bai Lin asked in surprise. "Muggles? Yes. That's right, that's what you call us. 12 years ago, a group of wizards rushed into my hometown. I heard that they killed at least 20 people, including my parents, for some magic spar mine. Others used the damned Oblivion curse, but they forgot me who was crushed under the rubble, and I still remember the one-eyed dragon in Rose Delmo, who said, 'It's just a bunch of muggles.'" The female killer seemed to be recalling the memory. He said bitterly, "Now I am no longer an ordinary muggle. I am the reformer Kiki Hades, the death god of wizards. I will hunt and kill you dark wizards for the rest of my life." As he said that, Kiki, the reformer, suddenly threw a small ball. Other wizards might not know what it was, but Bai Lin recognized it as a grenade at a glance. He hurriedly retreated on the snow wind. The grenade exploded violently. Bai Lin quickly put up his armor to protect himself, blocking the flying shrapnel. This is just an ordinary grenade, it has no spell-breaking properties, but when the smoke and dust dissipate, there is no more in the alley transformer Kiki's figure. In fact, Bai Lin can roughly guess which direction the reformed person Kiki fled to, but her words are very true. Bai Lin thinks it is very reliable, and immediately shakes his determination to pursue. Many dark wizards regard non-pure blood wizards as worthless, let alone muggles. Peter Pettigrew is not the most vicious group among Death Eaters. He killed 13 muggles with one spell. Others, such as Elder Ross, may not be Death Eaters, but extraordinary wealth is always accompanied by plunder and suppression, not to mention exploring the family and not taboo against black magic. And this Lawbreakers Association probably gathered a group of muggles who were victimized by dark wizards, and even modified their bodies, such as Kiki Hades and Caesar encountered by Cairo. Caesar's mechanical structure range probably more, so the whole person looks like a robot. And now, it is the beginning of the counterattack of these victims of the year. It is very dangerous. Revenge and arrogance are the most likely to blind people's eyes. If the lawbreakers continue to hunt and kill black wizards, it is easy to blur the difference between dark wizards and ordinary wizards, and thus hate all wizards. I hope it will not trigger a race between the species war. Thinking about it, Bai Lin retracted Swafeng and walked towards Charles Avenue step by step. Chapter 83. Quidditch Finals. Because of the shooting at the Opera House, Charles Street saw a sharp drop in tourists as soon as it opened. Of course, not only Charlie Street, but the secret firearms of the lawbreakers have had a great impact on the entire wizarding world. This impact is even worse than Voldemort's resurrection. And to scare the wizards. Voldemort is just one person, although he has some followers, they are murderers and thugs, but if there are really many wizards united against him, Voldemort is hard to beat with 2 fists and 4 hands, and the secret firearms are almost enough for muggles to fight. Being able to use the Avada Kedavra curse, and its range is far beyond the Kedavra curse, all wizards are in danger for a while. for fear that a muggle with a gun will suddenly appear there and spray them at themselves. However, after a week, wizards from all over the world could no longer find this kind of secret weapon. Even the Egyptian Lawbreakers Association seemed to disappear in an instant. The Wizarding Society began to think that the so-called lawbreakers and secret weapon were malicious rumors. For this reason, the French Ministry of Magic also held a hearing. In the end, the wizard counselors concluded that there is no so-called secret firearms. They are just a new type of black magic developed by a fugitive black wizard, which can make metal bullets fly at high speed, cause damage and so on. Blanco was forced to change the reward for the lawbreaker killer to a reward for a young female black wizard, but the reward only listed that the other party was a young woman, and he didn't even say what race he was. It's just a show. Poor Wolf and Miller almost died for nothing. There are also a lot fewer visitors to the Magic Zoo, but Bylin believes that he will get through it. The goblin employees don't care, and they are still working with high spirits. Bylin saw that he had nothing to do, so he rushed back to Hogwarts to continue to complete the teaching tasks of this semester, but every time in the Protection of Magical Animals class, there were always many students begging to get out of the nightmare of the snail. Instead, I went to the zoo to help for free. But Bylin decided to spend this weekend at Hogwarts, because not only he, but even Catherine received Harry's invitation to watch the Quidditch House Cup final he had prepared for a long time, Gryffindor vs. Slytherin. These two colleges are often in a competitive relationship because they often attend classes together, and the values and concepts of the two colleges are very different. The mutual hostility between Harry and Malfoy is simply the epitome of the two colleges. Time to do the math. Early in the morning, when the Gryffindor players walked into the auditorium, they were greeted with warm applause. Not only the Gryffindor students, but even the Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff students cheered for them. The cheers immediately made Bylin's blood ignite, and Catherine on the side came over and said, "You ride a flying broom very well, and you must be very good at playing Quidditch, right?" Bylin rubbed his nose and said, "Actually, when I was in school, I played a lot of basketball. But if I have a chance, I would like to try Quidditch too. Maybe you can play Quidditch on a dragon." Catherine teased. "Great idea." Bylin chuckled, "I want to form a fire dragon team, maybe they can win the World Cup." Bylin and Catherine were chatting intimately, and Harry also had a conversation with Chujong, but Harry seemed to be blushing, and Bylin couldn't help but think of his junior high school days, that kind of hazy little love, youthful it's beautiful, but looking at Catherine who is sipping soup beside her, Bylin's eyes are full of love. If you say that you have traveled to the world of wizards, what makes Bylin thank the illustrated book system or the sun god that the mentor of the night said most? Yes, that is what made him meet Catherine, an ordinary and perfect girl. Wood over there gave an order, and the team members finished their breakfast and walked out of the auditorium with cheerful steps. Everyone applauded again. George and Fred responded to the supporters with whistles, not forgetting to publicize for a moment, the current handicap is 0.75:2.4. Bylin once suspected that the two of them beat Slytherin to win. The students finished their breakfast early and rushed to the competition venue to grab their seats, but Bylin was not in a hurry at all. He was about to sneak away to the old blacksmith of Edison to exchange some equipment while everyone was leaving the castle. In the past, he was not very famous, and no one noticed him wandering in the Hufflepuff corridor. After all, there are a lot of Hufflepuffs, and many students are taller than Bylin, so he is not very eye-catching, but now Bylin is in the school. It can be said that the popularity is high, and students often meet with wizard cards and ask him to sign. Bylin quickly placed the order, almost emptied the Hogwarts contribution point that had been stored for a long time, and asked Addison to help him build a light armor with both magic defense and physical defense, and another piece that would help him cast for the apparition equipment. For the last remaining points, Bylin picked out a very exquisite necklace, Angel's Tears necklace, magic power +5, casting speed +5% from the spot. Catherine was watching Bylin at the entrance of the corridor, when she suddenly felt a chill on her neck. Bylin embraced her from behind, and put on a crystal clear diamond necklace for her. The center diamond was like a teardrop, exuding a faint golden light. "Ah!" Catherine jumped in surprise. She had never seen such an exquisite ornament, and it seemed that after wearing it, her magic power was enhanced. Bylin rested his chin on her neck, kissed her cheek and said, "I haven't given you a serious gift all this time, do you like it?" Catherine touched the necklace fondly, turned around and kissed Bylin together. Until he heard Filch swearing and walking past the kitchen. Mrs. Pants seemed to be following him and glanced at Bylin with complicated eyes. Bai Lin had a chill. This aunt helped him a lot when he first arrived at Hogwarts, but she didn't really like him, did she? Bai Lin felt that the time was almost up, so he dragged Catherine to the stadium. At this time, the stadium was full of cheers, and the stands were almost full. The red flag with the golden lion pattern of Fender, or banners such as "Come on, Gryffindor." There are 200 people wearing green ornaments behind the goalposts of Slytherin, and they are also waving a large flag with a silver snake pattern, but compared with the supporters of Gryffindor, it cannot be said to be inferior, it just doesn't exist. What made Bai Lin laugh the most was that Professor Snape was also wearing a Slytherin green headgear, with a gloomy smile on his face, as if I was proud of wearing a cuckold. The Gryffindor team has entered. Lee Jordan was still acting as the commentator, and he shouted, "Potter, Bell, Johnson, Spinnet, the Weasley brothers, and Captain Wood, it is generally believed that this the best team Hogwarts has seen in years. Let's wait and see. Professor Kylan, come here." Bai Lin heard a cry and turned his head. It turned out to be Chu Zhang. She reserved 2 seats for Bai Lin in the Ravenclaw stand and was waving to him enthusiastically. Chapter 84. With the start whistle, the final officially began, but from the first time Slytherin captain Marcus hit Harry's teammate Angelina, the match was not destined to be so civilized and peaceful. Fred quickly avenged Angelina, hitting Marcus on the back of the head with a stick, and Ms. Hodge mercilessly gave both teams a free throw. Bai Lin was even curious, is he really not worried about causing a game on the field or being punished by the school for such a blatant bumping and beating, but it seems that this is not uncommon in Europe. I heard that fighting in ice hockey is not considered a foul. On the court, the players of the 2 teams made more unscrupulous body attacks after free throws. The Slytherin players no longer focused on the quaffle or the bludger, but which Gryffindor player controlled the ball. Just go and besiege him. They are so hateful. Not only the Gryffindor students couldn't stand it, but even the commentator Lee Jordan and Ravenclaw's Chu Zhang couldn't help being indignant. "This is the dirtiest match I've ever seen." Chu Zhang, who was acting gentle, couldn't help scolding. They seized the weakness of the Gryffindor team. Bai Lin shrugged and said, "They don't have a substitute." Yes, even if the school doctor immediately treats her, she won't be able to go back to the game immediately after falling off the broom. Catherine was also quite worried for the players on the field. It depends on whether Harry can withstand the pressure, and the battle will be resolved quickly. Bai Lin commented. Harry and Malfoy are old friends above the field. The broom that Malfoy uses is Nimbus 2001. This broom and the Firebolt have their own advantages and disadvantages. Stability and braking performance are even better. Although Malfoy's personality is a bit annoying, his flying skills are not inferior to Harry's. The 2 chased after each other, and they were on par for a while. The pressure on Harry was greater than that of Captain Wood. This was his last year to participate in Hogwarts. If he could not win well, his desire to join a professional club would basically be lost. Hogwarts' first goalkeeper made several saves to keep the score at 40-10. However, this also made him the key target of the Slytherin team. Once Bowl and Derek taking control of the ball, he greeted Wood with the bludger, and wanted to knock him off the broom, but almost succeeded several times. High up in the air, Harry was flying around the pitch, with Malfoy speeding after him. Finally, Harry saw the snitch glowing 20 feet above them. Harry accelerated sharply, the wind whistling in his ears, and he stretched out his hand towards the snitch, feeling that victory was within reach, but he found his firebolt slowing down. Harry looked back, startled. It was Malfoy who jumped up and grabbed the firebolt by the tail, pulling him back. Although Malfoy was panting from tugging on the firebolt so hard, he achieved his goal and the snitch disappeared again. A fit of anger boiled over in Harry, but he held back without a dragon wag sweeping Malfoy off the broom. "Free throw!" shrieked Ms. Hooch, rushing forward. "Gryffindor free throw! I've never seen it done!" Even Lee Jordan roared into the microphone, "Shameless rascal!" This time even Professor McGonagall didn't reprimand him, but shook his fist at Malfoy, so excited that his hat fell off. "I hope you have learned something from getting along with the fire dragon. If the opponent is very vicious, how to use your advantage." Bai Lin murmured. There was a lot of noise on the court, because Aaliyah, who was in charge of the free throw, missed the shot because she was too angry. Harry in the air glanced at Bai Lin in the stands. Bai Lin was making a gesture of wings with both hands. Harry instantly understood something, and a confident smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. In the next match, Harry seemed to be a different person. He no longer focused on the golden snitch. Instead, he provoked Malfoy, led him around, and rushed towards a Slytherin. The team members made a sharp turn again, causing Malfoy to almost knock his teammates into pieces. They even used the occasional golden snitch as bait to attract Malfoy to snatch it, and then a dragon swung its tail and swept the golden snitch away. Malfoy nearly vomited blood. Malfoy's anger gradually caused him to lose his usual flying standards, and he even forgot that in this competition, besides the teachers and students of Hogwarts, there was also a reporter invited by Lynn with his relationship with the Ministry of Magic. And the scouts, although Harry didn't know about it, Malfoy knew about it in advance, so he wanted to win so badly, he wanted to win desperately, even with a little trick. However, cleverness was misunderstood by cleverness. The reporter obviously had no interest in the player who pulled Harry's broom before and then was played around. Harry, in the previous training and getting along with the zoo fire dragon, will fly his skills have improved to a higher level. To be honest, letting him play against the Slytherin team in this state is a kind of bullying. Finally, Harry had had enough of playing, and his teammates were exhausted. Harry and Malfoy saw the snitch flying to the ground, only a few feet away from the grass at the same time. They both accelerated and rushed towards the snitch. Both of them urged the flying brooms at the same time, accelerating desperately, almost regardless of whether they would hit the ground or not. At this time, Bowl hit the bludger, and Harry turned over suddenly and got under the broom, avoiding the bludger's attack. Malfoy's mouth was open enough to hold a fist, and his hand was desperately stretched forward, trying to catch the snitch before Harry, but Harry had already jumped off the broom, grabbing at it with one hand. The snitch, with his other hand blocking Malfoy's. Harry fell heavily on the grass and even rolled several times. Malfoy couldn't feel better, and fell off the broom. Malfoy obviously didn't go through the training of being thrown to the ground by a fire dragon, and he almost slapped him with his face. Damn, Lynn felt his nose hurt even looking at it. And Harry rolled a few times on the ground, and after losing the momentum of the fall, he jumped up suddenly, holding the golden snitch in his raised right hand. The audience was boiling, countless Gryffindor students rushed down the field. Wood was the first to hold Harry tightly in his arms, tears blurred. "Let's go, he did it. We should be busy with other things." Lynn pulled Catherine to stand up. "Professor, don't you celebrate with Harry?" Chu Jong asked in surprise. "No, I'm too lazy to accompany him because none of his fathers accompany him, haha." Lynn glanced at Snape, who still had a poker face and couldn't see any emotion, and shrugged. Chapter 85. The Prophecy of the Three Demon Kings. Having won the Quidditch Academy Cup, Harry's excitement lasted for at least a week. In fact, it wasn't just him. Reporters and scouts interviewed him and Wood after the match. Wood accepted the scouts' invitation. After a few years of unsatisfactory results, new blood like Wood is needed to join. Wood will graduate in June, and he will go to London to participate in the audition for the England team. After careful consideration, Harry still declined the invitation to join the youth training team. After all, he was only in the 3rd grade, and he still wanted to study hard at Hogwarts for a few years. It wasn't that he was suddenly as hungry for knowledge as Hermione. Rather, he has already set his own goal. He wants to become a knowledgeable and powerful magician like Lynn, and then become an Auror. In fact, even without the appearance of Lynn, Harry would have become the director of the Auror office in 2007, but the appearance of Lynn obviously brought this fate forward. Speaking of fate, it was originally more than a month later in May, when the last divination class exam, Professor Trelawney yelled out a rare prophecy, and it seemed that Lynn's appearance, and the original Peter, who was supposed to go to make peace with Voldemort, is dead, and the fate of some people has changed dramatically. Professor Trelawney, who was giving a divination class to Gryffindor, was still talking about the crystal ball in front of Hermione in the last sentence. Hermione said that Hermione went from being uncomfortable to being irritable, from being irritable to angry, and was about to hold the textbook and get angry. When leaving, Professor Trelawney suddenly fell backwards and lay directly on Dean's desk, without even realizing that Dean's crystal ball hit the ground and shattered. Professor Trelawney was trembling, his eyes were white, and he screamed loud and piercingly, "Just tonight." Everyone watched in horror as Professor Trelawney lost control. That appearance was so weird and terrifying that everyone forgot whether they should call the school doctor for rescue. At this time, Professor Trelawney spoke again, his voice was sharp, harsh, and trembling. "The 3 great demon kings are about to appear together. The Dark Lord lies alone, friendless, but his servant is free from his chains, and will join him tonight. Another Dark Lord repented on a high tower, but was possessed by an evil spirit that fell from the sky. The third devil is the most mysterious, he will appear with the flames of a giant dragon, and the corpses of countless wizards and muggles will pile up at his feet. Professor Trelawney's head drooped, making a gurgling sound. Then, when the terrified students looked at each other, suddenly, she looked up again, and she got up from Dean's desk very quickly. "I'm sorry, dear children," Trelawney said in a trance, "I didn't sleep well last night, it seems that I just took a nap." At this time, she saw the shattered crystal ball on the ground, and almost jumped up. "Oh! Dean! You broke your crystal ball!" "Dean, I..." Harry thought Dean must be trying to curse, something like that. A divination class passed inexplicably, and everyone was talking about Professor Trelawney's prophecy when he suddenly twitched. Of course, more than half of the students, including Hermione, thought that Professor Trelawney had mental problems, or hallucinations. The other half of the students took the three Demon Kings as the latest hot memes, and began to popularize the way of greeting. "I guess you are the third Demon King, die." And when Professor Trelawney said the word Dark Lord, Harry's forehead obviously hurt. The clear and hot feeling made Harry think that maybe Professor Trelawney saw it. Not a hallucination. If it was in the past, Harry might have kept this feeling in his heart, or after thinking for half a month, he would have written to Sirius to tell Sirius, but today Harry came to Hufflepuff after thinking for a while. Outside the classroom, Bylin was waiting for get out of class to finish. "You mean, Professor Trelawney said that there will be 3 Demon Kings?" Bylin rubbed his chin and said. "Professor, maybe you also think this is ridiculous," Harry said with some embarrassment, and began to regret taking this matter as true. "No, it's not absurd. I told you before that although Professor Trelawney looks a little special, she does have a very rare prophetic talent. I don't think she is talking about hallucinations." Bylin seriously. Bylin took out his small notebook and wrote down the prophecy relayed by Harry. The first devil, lying alone. The servant broke free from the shackles and found him. It should be Voldemort, he should still be a meatball at this time. The second devil, repenting on the tower. This. Could it be Mr. Grindelwald? He is over 100 years old at this time. The third Demon King, with the flame of a giant dragon. This? The return of the Dragon Mother? Linked with the Song of Ice and Fire. Bylin muttered to himself, and left on his own. Harry scratched his head, thinking, is this a new type of spell, which can make people go crazy after talking to the professor? Bylin returned to the faculty lounge, wrote the prophecy again on paper, and thought about countermeasures. The first Demon King Voldemort, to be honest, Bylin is not worried. The servant who found him is definitely not Peter, and there is a high probability that it is Barty Crouch Jr. If there is no Bylin's arrival, then the escaped Peter will be the nanny, and Barty Jr. will pretend to be Mad-Eye Moody. The appearance of Bylin must have brought about major changes to their plans. First of all, Azkaban seems to have escaped several Death Eaters in advance, including Barty Jr. If they still stick to their original plan and use the Goblet of Fire to take Harry teleport to Voldemort's side, they need another nanny. The second is that if he continues to be the defense against the dark arts teacher, then there will be no such thing as Moody, and Barty Jr. may sneak attack on him and become himself. No wonder it is said that the black defense class teacher is a high-risk job. No one can do it for more than 1 year. Nima Belan is not immortal now, little Barty is ruthless, even his own father is ruthless. This kind of sneak attack Bylin decided to let the kind-faced and kind-hearted Mad-Eye Moody be the best part of the confinement scene. Having made up his mind, Bylin approached Dumbledore immediately, saying that he would now focus more on the study of magical animals. The implication was to take care of the business of the magical zoo, so he would not be able to continue as the next semester. The teacher of the Black Defense class. Dumbledore gave Bylin a look of I understand. He was already planning to invite his friend Moody who just retired, but he didn't know how to tell Bylin that this is good, and he gave Bylin a favor, why not do it? Dumbledore pretended to tell Bylin to put more experience in teaching and educating people. Bylin asked him which professor was the most proficient in geography. Dumbledore recommended Mrs. Pants from the library to him. Bylin, I. Chapter 86. The Riddle Mansion. Of course, Bylin would not go to Mrs. Pinksy to find bad luck. He thought of another person, Zhou Bai, who is a space mage. This knowledge of geography should be quite good. By the way, Bylin also wanted to ask him about the apparition spell skill. When they rushed to the canteen of the zoo, Zwabai and Phoenix were very busy. As the popularity of the news gradually decreased, Charles Street also resumed business. Of course, the flow of people must have been reduced by more than half compared to when it opened, but Magic Zoo is still doing a brisk business, being the only one after all. Seeing the appearance of the principal, the tourists and children were very excited. Bai Lin could only perform another play of summoning the snow wind. The poor and vicious white werewolf became the joy of the children. By the way, where is Dobby? Why are you too busy? Bai Lin got away from the crowd and asked. Have you forgotten? My master, Dobby is still in charge of the goblin staff's lunch, so he's going to deliver it. Phoenix said while frying the chicken chops, and then he didn't forget to mutter, it is despicable and shameless to ask the master to pay you a salary. Bai Lin rolled his eyes, wondering how to fool a few house elves into working, and when he had enough people, he even wanted to start a takeaway business. Finally, when Dobby came back, seeing him holding a higher plate than others, Bai Lin wiped his sweat for him. Bai Lin hurriedly asked him to replace Zhou Bai, and dragged Zhou Bai to his director's office. Boss, is there anything important? I still have 2 servings of braised beef tenderloin that I haven't cooked yet. Zwabai was wearing a white initial outfit with a greasy face, which was much brighter than the black wizard's attire when we first met. Yes, there are 3 characters all over the body, down to earth. 2 things, the first one, do you know a place called Riddle House? It should be in England. Bai Lin said. He wants to find out where Voldemort's home is. Even if the plot changes significantly, Voldemort will most likely choose to return to his father's ancestral house. After all, his dead father's bones are needed to restore his body, and which house is the best hiding place? Zwabai thought for a while and said, is there any other clue? This doesn't seem to be a place name, boss. Bai Lin really couldn't remember the name of the place, but he thought of another clue, the Gunter family. The Gunter family lives near there. They should be quite famous, right? Zwabai thought for a moment and said, it should be in Greater Hangleton, not far from London. I roughly know the location. Bai Lin patted Zwabai on the shoulder and said, take me to this big Hangleton. The Riddle Mansion should not be far from there. Go and inquire and you should be able to find it. You may encounter a dark wizard, not you dark wizards, yes, the Dark Lord's people. You can decide whether to help me or not. Zwabai was taken aback, looked at Bai Lin's rare seriousness, nodded vigorously and said, no problem, boss, as for fighting, isn't that what I am good at? In the words, a powerful space mage was oppressed by capitalists. The picture of the spicy chicken chef at the canteen is vivid. However, because it was rare for the principal to come to the office, the deputy principal Patrice blocked Bai Lin in the office with an unfriendly expression, brought him a lot of documents, and asked him to sign everything today. The goblins are indeed very efficient at work, but they have buried a lot of pitfalls in the documents. Things like trying to get an extra gallon from the Seeker family are everywhere. Bai Lin can't let them go. In the end, Bai Lin, after working so hard until it was getting dark, Patrice looked at his pocket watch before letting Bai Lin go. The 2 were non-stop, and Zhou Bai took Bai Lin to Paris first, then rushed to England through a hidden 2-way door of the Black Witch Association. It was considered a smuggling passage, and finally rushed to Great Hangleton with flow powder. Great Hangleton got a big name, but it is actually a remote village. If Zwabai didn't exist here, Bai Lin wouldn't be able to find this place even if he tried to die. Because it was already dark, Bai Lin managed to find an old man who was smoking on the side of the road with a wine bottle and inquired about it. He didn't explain the Riddle House, but the old house of the Gaunt house was quite famous, because it was said that it was the most evil house in the area. The haunted house, no one dares to approach. Bai Lin thought to himself that this is not in the era of short videos. When everyone is self-media, just an adventure anchor can break the threshold of a haunted house. Bai Lin glanced at the only side mission, the 7 deadly sins, destroying the remaining Horcruxes, but after thinking about it, he still didn't dare to set foot in the old house of the Gaunt family. Although the ring of Marvolo Gaunt, one of Voldemort's Horcruxes, is hidden in the old house, Bai Lin should be able to find it with his red eyes, but the curse on the ring in the original book even Dumbledore was hit. Bai Lin doesn't dare to provoke him yet, but he has a direction to solve the problem. Let's talk about it when the time is right. At last, for £1, Zwabai found out from a boy the location of the Riddle House, in Little Hangleton, nearly 5 miles away. The boy said that if he gave him another £1, he could tell them all the legends of Riddle House. But when the child looked up, the 2 gentlemen had long since disappeared. Of course, Bai Lin knows the so-called legend of the Riddle House. If Gaunt's old house is a well-known haunted house in the Great Hangleton, then the Dell House is a famous haunted house in the Little Hangleton. This is about Voldemort's, Tom Riddle, life experience. Voldemort's mother is Merope, the youngest daughter of the Gaunt family, a direct descendant of Slytherin, who fell in love with the rich and handsome old Tom, a muggle in the next village, and married old Tom by using love drugs, but when old Tom was sober finally abandoned her, so she could only give birth to Voldemort in the orphanage. 50 years ago, the adult Voldemort learned from his uncle Morphin Gaunt that his father was a muggle. This hurt Voldemort, who advocated pure blood, almost 50 points, and he went crazy. He also rushed to the Riddle Mansion in Little Hangleton, killed his biological father and grandparents, and blamed his uncle Morphin, modified Morphin's memory. The verdict on Morphin was carried out by the Ministry of Magic, so the local muggles didn't know the cause of the Riddle family's death at all, and all kinds of weird haunted stories have been circulating, and it was once suspected that Frank the gardener did it. Poor Frank. In this way, he spent his whole life under the guidance of everyone, but he never left, and has been taking care of the garden for the later master. 50 years have passed, the mansion of the Riddle Mansion has been dilapidated, and children who have heard the legend often come to do little damage. Only the 50-year-old Frank is still here. In the original book, he hid here because he heard about it. The meatball Voldemort spoke to and was killed. It was nearly midnight when Bai Lin arrived. Although it was dark enough to fly on a broom, it was really hard to find a house with no impression. In the end, Bai Lin determined the location based on the statue of the Angel of Death on the cemetery next to the mansion. The thing is still the set given in the movie, but I didn't expect it to exist. Although 50 years have passed, the richness and grandeur of the Riddle family can still be vaguely seen. The mansion was pitch black, with no light at all. Bai Lin was slightly relieved, as if Barty Jr. hadn't brought Voldemort here yet. Chapter 87. Looking at the gloomy and dark mansion, Bai Lin didn't know what to do for a while. He also thought about whether he could sneak attack and kill Voldemort at this time when he was at his weakest, but he quickly denied it. Idea. First of all, although Voldemort is still an incomplete man in the original book, he can already try out the wand, and the old Frank was killed by him. This is the scary part of the spell of Kedavra. Pure idealistic spells have little to do with magic power, and are mainly driven by killing intent. Although Mad-Eye Moody once said that strong mana is needed as the basis for casting spells, Crabbe, a villain student who has always been poor in grades, successfully used the death curse, which proves that Moody is just to warn the students. To kill the curse mainly relies on killing intent rather than magic power. Voldemort, who can use the killing curse, and the equally fierce and powerful Barty Crouch Jr., without Peter, but it is possible that Barty Jr. will find another partner, that is, the three relentless bosses. Bai Lin. Although the magic power has greatly increased, there is still no certainty of victory. What's more, even if he was lucky enough to succeed, he still couldn't kill Voldemort, because he still had at least 5 Horcruxes that had not been destroyed, the ring, the pendant, the gold cup, Nagini, and the fragments in Harry's body, any of which would make Voldemort die again. Revived with unpredictable results. So after careful consideration, Bai Lin decided not to startle the snake, but to follow the original plot to develop strategies and maintain foresight. I need to make a portkaya that can get here at any time, can I make it? Bai Lin asked in a low voice. He didn't want to disturb poor old Frank. Zwabai was taken aback, rubbed his hands together and said, "Is it for repeated use or one way? If it is for one-time use, it can be made now." Bai Lin suddenly felt that it was so convenient to have such a little brother, so he added chicken legs later. "Do a single one first, and if there are multiple needs, I will find you again." Zwabai nodded. Bai Lin chose a very hidden location, where he could clearly see the movement in the old house and the cemetery. Zwabai drew a small magic circle at the destination and injected it with magic power. Then, one of Bai Lin's wizard cards was made into a door key that could be sent to the destination at any time. The whole process took nearly an hour, and Zhou Bai was sweating on his forehead, which seemed to have consumed a lot of mana. Bai Lin put away the card and gave Zwabai a thumbs up. Bai Lin remembered that Harry only saw Voldemort arrive at the Riddle Mansion in his dream in mid-August. It is only April now, and there are still a few months of preparation time. Lin has a lot of opportunities to prevent Voldemort from being completely resurrected. As long as Voldemort remains in the state of a meatball, Bai Lin is confident in destroying his Horcruxes one by one. Bai Lin glanced at old Tom Riddle's tombstone, and suddenly had an evil thought. Since Voldemort needs 3 elements to recast his body, his father's bone, his servant's flesh, and his enemy's blood. So now that old Tom's skeleton is in front of him, there's no reason not to do something. Zwabai, is there a way to get the coffin up without loosening the soil above? Bai Lin pointed to old Tom's grave. Zhou Bai was stunned and said, Boss, you said there was a fight over here, and you didn't say that you would dig a grave, immoral. Bai Lin snorted and said, aren't you a member of the Black Witch Association? Do you do immoral things? Don't worry, what I'm going to do is definitely for peace and justice. Plus 10 galleons, if you don't do it, I will personally do it. Give me 10 minutes. Zwabai said firmly. Leaving Zhou Bai busy, Bai Lin slipped to the butcher shop in the village, found several pig bones and beef bones that were similar to human bones, sneaked into the small river, cleaned the minced meat on the bones, and then took the mud, put it on, roast it with fire, and then clean up the mud. Seeing that the bones look like old bones, Bai Lin smiled with satisfaction. Back at the Riddle Mansion, Zwabai had already got the coffin out. He used space magic to open a long tunnel obliquely before he got the coffin out. Bai Lin gave him a thumbs up again, and opened it. For the coffin, I removed old Tom's arm bones and leg bones, and asked Zhou Bai to get the coffin back. In the end, Bai Lin was sure that everything was perfect, so he took old Tom's bones under the big tree by the river, buried them in the soil, and kept saying, Old Tom, your son is nothing, but you are just a bad guy. Lao Zi brought your bones out for you, just to keep your bones, don't blame Lao Zi for some reason. After everything was done, Bai Lin waved his hand, get out. As soon as Bai Lin left, a magical wave appeared out of thin air in the old house, and then 3 figures appeared in the hall of the old house. If you look closely, one of the tall figures is holding a large box on his chest, and there is a strange sound coming from the box, like someone laughing, or some kind of animal. A large snake nearly 12 feet long also appeared in the room, circling around these figures, making a hissing sound. At Hogwarts, hundreds of miles away, Harry woke up suddenly from his sleep. The scar on his forehead that had not moved for nearly a year was painful like a fire. In the big, painted house, 3 figures suddenly appeared, as if they were plotting something. Harry couldn't see the faces of these 3 people, but Harry knew that he didn't know any of them just by their figures. The second thing that terrified Harry was the huge basilisk. Harry didn't know that Nagini was a blood-cursed orc, which reminded him of his terrible experience in the Chamber of Secrets in his 2nd year, and how he could the strange ability to understand snake language. In the end, what made Harry very disturbed was that he actually saw Bai Lin in his dream. This professor whom he admired from the bottom of his heart, actually dug out a coffin. He didn't see the digging process, he only saw Bai Lin stood in front of the coffin, and took someone's bones from the coffin. Bai Lin rushed back to London, found a hotel and had a good night's sleep, but the next morning, Zhou Bai came to find Bai Lin with a newspaper, and Bai Lin took a look, although it was a Muggle newspaper, but what was reported was something closely related to the wizarding world. Zwabai pointed to a piece of news, not the headline, and said, Numergard was destroyed by a meteor. What a big news! Bai Lin took it over and took a look, and saw that it read, an ancient castle located in the deep mountains of Austria was hit by a meteorite at 23:5 last night, and the scene was severely damaged. It is understood that this ancient castle has been abandoned for many years, due to inconvenient transportation. Few tourists went there, and no casualties have been found so far. Seeing Bai Lin's bewildered expression, Zhou Bai said, Numergard, a wizard prison as famous as Azkaban. Chapter 88. The Second Demon King. Is it the prison where the first Dark Lord Grindelwald was imprisoned? Bai Lin asked. Exactly. I heard that the meteor just hit the tower where the Dark Lord was. The explosion almost flattened the entire castle. Even the villages in Germany felt the shock. The Dark Lord is probably wiped out. Zhou Bai said. Looking at the contents of the newspaper and the blurred photos, Bai Lin doesn't think that the old man Grindelwald just died like this. In the original book, the old man has already begun to repent for his youthful actions in his later years. What is the relationship between him and Dumbledore, kept the secret for Dumbledore when Voldemort was looking for the old wand, and was killed by Voldemort? I don't know why the movie was filmed and told Voldemort, maybe it was to reduce the plot. But according to Trelawney's prophecy, there was an unknown extraterrestrial evil spirit that descended from the sky and possessed the old man. Obviously, this was completely divorced from the Harry Potter story that Bai Lin knew. Suddenly, he thought of a question, since he can travel from the original Earth to the world of wizards, is it possible for people from other worlds to travel over? My avatar in this world, what I call myself in other parallel universes, is this young wizard named Kylan White, and maybe someone else's avatar in this world is Mr. Grindelwald. Thinking of this, Bylin suddenly felt his back start to sweat. Since Trelawney called him an evil spirit, there is no reason for the person who crossed over to be a good person. In fact, according to the original book, Grindelwald was no longer the Dark Lord at this time. He killed Dumbledore's sister by mistake decades ago, and parted ways with Dumbledore, which made the Dark Lord start thinking about his beliefs, values, ideals, etc., and other issues, and began to self-doubt and introspection. The prison where Grindelwald is held is desolate and lonely. There are no Dementors as guards, only the magic restriction set by Grindelwald himself. Newmangard is a prison established by Grindelwald himself, and Bylin thinks that is Grindelwald serving the sentence voluntarily. If he really wants to escape from prison, it should not be difficult, but he feels that even if he escapes from prison, sooner or later he will have to face Dumbledore again as an enemy, so he would rather die in prison. However, the evil spirits that cross over will not have the calm mind of the old man, but will possess the explosive magic power and profound magic knowledge of the old man. If he also has an artifact similar to the summoning illustration book, what the hell? Bylin couldn't imagine what impact it would have on the world. Let's go back to the zoo first. I'm going to talk to Elder Ross. Bylin pondered over and over again, and decided to find a way to prepare for a rainy day from the Seeker family. Old Man Ross. Zwabai rubbed his nose and said contemptuously, "Boss, don't be fooled by him." Bylin made a haha, counting the days. Elder Ross' injury should be almost healed. He still has a lot of things to figure out. For example, Kaka seems to have known the existence of the Lawbreaker for a long time, such as tracking down the follow-up to Kiki Hades' Spellbreaker assassin. After returning to the zoo, Bylin immediately found Phoenix. "I want to see Elder Ross, can I get in touch?" Bylin misses the smartphones of the 21st century so much. He really can't get used to using owls and the like, and there is no one who has to write letters slowly when something is urgent. Phoenix put down what he was doing, took out a crumpled note and a quill from his pocket, and said, "You can find Mr. Kaka first, and I will inform him. Master, please see the Elder Lord, please send a message." He muttered and wrote the sentence on the note. After writing the note, Phoenix snapped his fingers. It's so convenient that he doesn't need to chant spells, and the note disappeared with a whoosh. What the hell, could it be a text message? Bylin felt a black line on his forehead. Sure enough, science and magic lead to the same goal by different routes. After a while, a note appeared by Phoenix's side out of thin air. Phoenix took a look and said, "Mr. Kaka replied and asked the master to meet at the mansion in Lionheart Square for dinner. We have to wait until the afternoon." Bylin was a little anxious, walking up and down in the canteen. "Master. Phoenix has a small suggestion." Phoenix rubbed his hands together. "What?" Bylin raised his head and asked. "If you have nothing to do right now, you might as well help Phoenix deliver the lunchbox that Patrice ordered." Phoenix pointed at the pile of lunchboxes beside him. "What? Where's Dobby?" Bylin looked around, but couldn't find another house elf who was working hard. Phoenix said with a strange expression, "You promised Dobby yourself that you would give him 2 days off every month. I heard that he went to help the hostess in the shop." Bylin suddenly realized, but when he thought that the vacation Dobby asked for was to help Catherine, he was speechless. If Dobby was a human being, he would definitely think that he was trying to pry into the corner of Lark's forehead. But at this time, he just lamented the fact that the domestic child the nature of elves. That being the case, he had to use the levitation technique to find the goblins with a lunchbox that was half the height of a person, and by the way, inspect the zoo's operation. He was even less interested in doing the work of the principal, so let's make up for it today. The head of the garden personally delivered the food, which moved the goblin employees very much, who said goblins only recognize money. Patrice was also quite surprised. He always thought that Bylin was the rich man of the Seeker family who only took money and did nothing. Second generation. Patrice took Bylin to inspect the fire dragon area and the beast area, and said as he walked, "Your Excellency, the gladiatorial event you plan to organize, Patrice thinks that the time is ripe and can start at any time." Saying that, Patrice pointed to the horntail and said, "Magic Flame hasn't eaten human flesh for a long time." Magic Flame is the name given to that horntail by the goblin. Bylin, WTF? Did you misunderstand the entertainment in the zoo? Bylin silently told himself that it is fine to let the goblins collect money and sell tickets, but this wrestling event must never be entrusted to them. Finally in the afternoon, Phoenix took Bai Lin, and used apparition to reach an unknown area in Paris. In a high-end residential area, there was a small square with a statue of the Lionheart King. With a snap of the fingers, a new tree-lined avenue grew out of several passages, and at the other end of the avenue was a rather beautiful manor. "Welcome to the Rose Delmo family estate, my master," Phoenix introduced. Chapter 89. Rose Manor. Bai Lin glanced at Phoenix and said, "Aren't you from the elder Mort's family? You seem to be very familiar with the Ross family." "Ah, my master, the house elf of the Seeker family, spent his childhood at Rose Delmo's house, and our elders here are responsible for training us." Phoenix looked nostalgic. Bai Lin thought to himself, "I'm afraid it's brainwashing." Following Phoenix, Bai Lin stepped into the manor, and Phoenix did not forget to introduce the general situation of the Ross family, what has been passed down for thousands of years, hereditary aristocrats, and so on. Bai Lin couldn't help rolling his eyes. Like many families, when it comes to history, he desperately put gold on your face, and you can't prove it anyway. Kaka was already standing in front of the gate with a few waiters to greet him, and enthusiastically took Bai Lin's hand. Bai Lin smiled calmly and pulled his hand back. He always felt that Kaka still squeezed when shaking hands. After touching him, Bai Lin felt like he was being molested. "Master Elder is waiting for you in the lobby," Kaka said enthusiastically. Seeing his posture, he wished he could walk with Bai Lin's arm. Bai Lin Hui stepped aside with a smile, and followed Kaka through a very well-kept garden. When they passed by, all kinds of roses bloomed along the roadside, and after they passed by, they returned to flower buds look like. "Oh! Carrie, you're here." Elder Ross half-lead on a magic rocking chair suspended in the air, surrounded by 4 young maids, who were comfortably reading the Daily Prophet in the hall. "Yo, you old boy still have this fun," thinking to himself. Bai Lin looked at the 4 maids with good looks and hot figures, and their short skirts that only reached 15 centimeters above their knees. "Ross! Uncle!" Bai Lin stepped up the steps and came to Elder Ross. "Dinner is already served, let's chat while eating." Ross's one-eyed eyes made people look like he couldn't match kindness, but he tried his best to appear amiable. "Have you seen Fudge recently?" "Good guy, I heard that he is very busy recently." "Of course, the French Ministry of Magic was also blown up today," Rose said as he walked. While admiring the decoration of Rose Manor, Bai Lin is indeed a veteran nobleman. Just a random oil painting hanging on the wall can fetch a lot of money if it is taken out, of course, if the characters in the oil painting don't move around. Walking through the long porch, I came to a restaurant built of transparent glass. It is not made of Muggle light steel structure, but completely made of glass, which looks crystal clear, like the inside of a diamond. The long dining table is enough for more than 20 people to eat, but at this time there are only 3 sets of tableware. Rose said, "Lulu heard that you are coming, and will come back to attend at night, you don't mind?" "Why? I miss Lulu too, sister." Bai Lin said politely. Since they met in the coffee shop that day, Bai Lin has never spoken to Lulu again. The concert is not counted. Bai Lin wondered why Lulu didn't visit Rose when he entered the hospital, but it was obviously not something he should worry about. Kaka disappeared in no time after sending Bai Lin into the lobby. Bai Lin thought it would be better if he wasn't there, and he didn't want to be teased by him anymore. As soon as she sat down, a blue-green figure walked into the restaurant quickly. Lulu's iconic red hair was particularly conspicuous. It seems that he came in a bit of a hurry, and did not wear earrings and accessories. "Hi Cousin Carrie." Lulu greeted Bai Lin with her slender fingers, and Bai Lin smiled and nodded at her. He felt that Lulu was more beautiful. The 3 of them sat down at the guest table, and Bai Lin said, "Uncle Ross, have you seen the news about Nurmengard?" Rose pointed to the Prophet's daily report still in his hand. "This is today's headline. It seems that Grindelwald disappeared in such an unexplained way. Drink. That old man was very domineering when he was young, and later Voldemort is 3 points inferior to him." Rose didn't have the fear of Voldemort like ordinary British wizards. Bai Lin said, "I'm afraid it's a bit alarmist to say it. After a while, there will be a brand new Grindelwald appearing, more powerful. Maybe with strange abilities that people can't understand." Rose raised his finger to the waiter, and the waiter immediately opened a small door on the side, and a group of house elves came in with various dishes. Bai Lin noticed that he had specially arranged a Chinese-style roast duck for him. Ross said, "Should I be afraid? My child." It seemed that he didn't believe a word of Bai Lin's words. Lulu said, you mean the first generation of the Dark Lord is not dead? Under the impact of such a powerful meteorite. Do you know Professor Trelawney? She once predicted recently that the Dark Lord who repented in the tower was possessed by an evil spirit that fell from the sky, and within 2 days, a meteorite hit Nurmengard. This should be it's not a coincidence. Bai Lin could only pull out the prophet to prove himself. Trelawney? Aha, is there anyone in their family alive? I heard they are all crazy. Rose said, taking a sip of venison soup. In other words, if it wasn't for Voldemort and the evil spirits involved, Bai Lin would have thought Trelawney was a crazy woman. Roston paused and said, say it straight, kid, whether Grindelwald is dead or not, why did you come to me? Bai Lin said, I want to see the judge teacher. Rose was startled and said, why do you think that the soul mentor will help this matter? Bai Lin paused, and suddenly his thoughts cleared up a lot. He said, as you know, Elder Moritz once let me meet the instructor of the night. It was a wonderful experience. The instructor of the night told me that the outer gods are about to invade. To protect the world of wizards, it is up to the Seeker family. He didn't mention that he also came from beyond the sky, and Bai Lin thought it was a good-natured concealment. Rose suddenly shocked his fat body, slapped his hands on the dining table, and stood up. He seemed to be extremely excited and said, yeah, did the mentor of the night really say that? Bai Lin also stood up and said, it's true, I swear by the blood of the Seeker family. Speaking of which, I don't know what the blood is. If it weren't for the summoning guide, I would still be a muggle. Elder Ross held the position where he was shot, and seemed to be in some dark pain. He thought for a while and said, although each mentor orb can only be activated once a year, it is of great importance. Lulu, you can take a trip with Kaylee. Var. Lulu stood up and agreed with her whole mouth. Her expression was calm, and she should have seen the trial instructor. There is no way to eat this meal. Bai Lin glanced at the roast duck on the table, thinking that it would be great if he could pack a bag when he left later. Chapter 90. The Judgment Mentor. Elder Ross sat on a floating rocking chair and led Bai Lin and Lulu down a long staircase. Bai Lin had seen Harry visit the vault of Gringotts Bank in the Harry Potter movie, although Ross Manor, the underground secret passages in the underground are not as exaggerated as Gringotts, and you have to travel in a minecart, but the layers of prohibition and anti-theft systems are not inferior. In front of the last secret room, there is no fire dragon guarding the door. Bai Lin personally thinks that the fire dragon guarding the door is a symbol, the efficiency is too low, and it is troublesome to raise, but more than a dozen medieval knights in armor stand on both sides with swords, guns, swords, and halberds. However, Bai Lin has no doubt that if thieves come in, these armors will come alive and display 18 martial arts. However, the interior of the Chamber of Secrets is not like the mountain of gold and silver treasures piled up like the Lestrange family vault, but a rather tidy small room, and in the middle of the room is a stone pillar more than 1 meter high, and the top of the stone pillar is impressively a crystal clear and shining mentor orb. This secret room is an iron coffin. I was terrified the first time I came here. Lulu whispered, standing shoulder to shoulder with Bai Lin. The scent on her body was quite charming. Meditate, hold on, you are someone with a girlfriend, Bai Lin shouted wildly in his heart, but the scent was so good that Bai Lin couldn't move his feet at all. This is the secret room specially used by the Ross family to communicate with the soul mentor. During the communication process, the children's bodies will be in a very weak state. If they encounter any external force, it will easily cause irreversible and serious consequences, Elder Ross explained. You have all used the mentor orb before, so I don't need to talk about it. I will close the door later and open it in an hour. During this period, even if the moon hits the earth, this secret room will be unharmed. Bai Lin suddenly realized, recalling the last time he spirited out of his body in the hotel room, if some enemy appeared at that time, the consequences would be disastrous, and he was a little scared after thinking about it. After Bai Lin and Lulu entered the room, Elder Ross closed the door. Bai Lin could tell that the door was at least 50 centimeters long and divided into several layers. They were all made of unknown black metal and could not be touched without touching. No super strong. Bai Lin glanced at Lulu at the side, and saw that Lulu carefully took out a wand. Bai Lin hadn't noticed where she hid the wand before, and Lulu said, Cousin Carrie, I will see you later. Casting spells communicates with the orb, and the orb cannot be touched directly with your body. Well, didn't you touch the orb with your hand last time to meet the mentor of the night, right? Let you guess right. Bai Lin felt MMP in his heart, who told Labor and Capital how to play, not a single one. Lulu stretched out her left hand and said, "Well then, hold my hand, and I'll cast the spell." She generously stretched out her left hand, and didn't say what the consequences would be if she directly touched the magic ball. Bai Lin hesitated for a moment, thinking, "This is our cousin, what are we so worried about?" He stepped forward and held Lulu's hand. Lulu's hand was thinner than Catherine's, but it was equally comfortable to hold. Lulu made an S shape with her wand in front of her eyes, and muttered, "The Eye of Truth, uncover the fog." Different from the dark magic ball of the Teacher of the Night, the magic ball of the Teacher of the Trial is full of light, and it also emits a slight golden light. Lulu's spell still alarmed the summoning illustration book, and the ancient book with gold border jumped out from Bai Lin's shoulder, and turned over again. When it comes to the page of soul fragments, no matter how Bai Lin flips through, he can't find this page, but when he enters the magic ball, the illustrated book will always pop up, as if he wants to back up Bai Lin's soul. Bai Lin felt dizzy again, but this time it was a bit different, because Lulu threw herself into his arms and hugged his waist tightly. The feeling of turning into toilet paper thrown into the toilet reappeared. With the button of the toilet, the two soul toilet paper were sucked into the magic ball. Bai Lin saw the state of his soul again, and his body lost the sense of touch. Even if Lulu's soft jade and warm fragrance hugged his arms, Bai Lin didn't feel it at all. Bai Lin was rejoicing and disappointed at the same time. This is a completely different wonderland from the night magic ball. The afterglow of the setting sun reflected the whole sky golden, and there was a large red sunset glow on the distant mountains, and they came to a huge building floating in the air. It is built with snow-white marble, and the frames, rails, sides, and eaves of the building are decorated with golden decorations everywhere, making the whole building solemn and gorgeous. Lulu floated out of Bai Lin's arms in embarrassment. Bai Lin saw that Lulu had changed into a religious robe. Shoulder armor and arm armor are worn on the arms, and a long sword hangs from the waist. Lulu noticed Bai Lin's gaze and said, "This is the judge's costume. Only the soul form can appear. I don't know what it is for. Let's go, the judge is waiting for us." Walking into the glorious hall, Bai Lin saw the appearance of the mentor of the judge. He is much more imposing than the half-human, half-ghost knight mentor. He is like the legendary angel of judgment. He is wearing a white gold-rimmed heavy armor. A golden spear, holding a balance in his left hand, behind him are wings made of white brilliance, but there is darkness in the helmet, no one can see. "You scum of chaos, you are not welcome in the Temple of Order." A majestic voice sounded in the hall. It was only then that Bai Lin remembered that he was in the camp of chaos and goodness, and he was born to be hostile to the creatures of the camp of order, while the judge tutor was in the camp of order neutrality, also called the camp of absolute order. People in this camp only talk about order, or procedural justice. Regardless of the good or evil of behavior, they believe that good and evil are nothingness, and different angles will have different results, and only laws and order are eternal truths. Judgment Mentor. "The matter is important, please calm down." Lulu stepped forward and said, "Cousin Kaylee brought important news. The lies of chaos are not believed in the Temple of Order." The trial instructor forcefully thrust the golden spear on the floor, making an ear-splitting knocking sound. Those who were less able to bear it might have knelt down on the spot. Bai Lin was about to say something, but the judge had already seen the golden ancient book on his shoulder. So you are a child of the sun god. Maybe I should hear the news." The scale in the hands of the judge shook slightly and returned to balance again. Bai Lin guessed that the soul mentor would see through his origin, but it was wonderful that the trial mentor didn't explain this to Lulu. "Yesterday, an evil spirit from the outer space descended through a meteor and possessed an old but extremely powerful Dark Lord. I think it is the power of the Outer God." "Outer God?" The judge trembled slightly, as if he had thought of something extremely terrifying. The judge seemed to think about it for about a minute, and said, "You haven't reached the worst situation yet, you still have enough time. If you can obtain the supernatural power of the Sun God." "The supernatural power of the Sun God." "Bai Lin, one head and two big, I only know a few crappy black magics, and I have also met magic immune spell breakers. How to obtain divine power, I will be grateful." Chapter 91. The judge seemed to be staring at Bai Lin for a while, and said, "It seems that there are still many things you don't know, and I'm not a good storyteller, but since you've come to me, listen to me in detail." Bar. The language of the trial instructor seemed to be full of magic power, causing Bai Lin and Lulu to see some illusions in front of their eyes. The bright galaxy, explosion and destruction, reunion and recovery, seemed to be an eternal repetition in the universe. The judge-teacher said, "There are many human worlds in the boundless universe, and there are many different types of you where you were created, but you have all been favored by God. The universe has gone through countless epochs. The first gods have long since disappeared in the abyss of time and dimensions, and then many new gods were born. Some of them are keen to create order and civilization for potential planets, while others just want to be infinite. Some ingest substances, while some only think about destruction and returning to zero. The gods have had countless wars, and the wars have affected many worlds. Some worlds collapsed because of this, and some were sublimated because of it. But in the end, some gods were expelled into the endless void. These gods are called outer gods. They have been far away from our understanding and detection ability, and they will never intersect with them in the short history of human beings. The remaining gods established the cornerstone of the order of the world, the pantheon. But they decided to only create the most basic order for the planet, and no longer interfere with the birth, development, and extinction of life and civilization. Human civilizations in many worlds have a few words about the pantheon. Even the word pantheon comes from myths fabricated by newly born humans after many epochs. People mold the gods into various images, which is very surprising. In which legends of the old gods and outer gods appeared. Although the pantheon has decided not to interfere with life and civilization, there are always some gods who have an inexplicable preference for humans, such as the sun god. The sun god has too many names in many worlds. Even in a certain human world, some groups call him Apollo, some call him Terra, and some call her Zai. But they all have one thing in common. Place, love human beings. In the process of observing human beings, the sun god found that human beings knew the existence of the old gods. To describe it in terms of distance, the thoughts and minions of the old gods came to the human world as early as the dawn of civilization, and even controlled and dominated the development of civilization for a period of time. They are called the old rulers. Of course, the pantheon would not allow such a situation to happen, but none of the gods believed in the investigation and speculation of the sun god, and instead blamed him for paying too much attention to human beings. In the end, the sun god had to find his own spokesperson among human beings. Dimensions eliminated or expelled the minions of the old gods and won countless victories. But how many hidden minions there are in the universe, and when they will appear again, no one knows. Although these minions are weak compared to the gods, for humans, they are the current outer gods, the outer gods who can rule the human world or destroy the human world. The extraterrestrial evil spirit you mentioned is such an existence. The amount of information was a bit large, and it took Bailin and Lulu a long time to digest it before they figured it out. Alien. Bailin summed it up in 3 words. Aliens with evil intentions to rule over humans. Lulu added, and the two smiled at each other. The world you live in has a very complete order and belief. This order and belief have established an invisible protective shield for the world. Generally speaking, it is difficult for the outer gods to invade. But for unknown reasons, a tiny crack appeared in this invisible shield. Although only the weakest minions of the old gods can get through the gap, it cannot survive independently, but once combined with intelligent life forms, it will still have enough threat capacity of the world. It sounds a bit like a symbiosis. Bailin didn't say the word venom, then how can I obtain the supernatural power of the sun god and defeat this weak minion? He emphasized the word weak. The judge pointed to the summoning guide on Bailin's shoulder and said, "You have the treasure of the sun god, absorb it and fuse it." Lulu looked left and right beside Bailin, but she didn't see anything. However, Bailin saw the points item on the illustrated book, 2516. Could it be that if he had to light up all the illustrated books by himself, what extraordinary changes would happen? However, in such a thick illustrated book, there are thousands of species of creatures recorded, and there are still many blank pages. Even if Bailin does not need to consider the external influence, he desperately seals it. Traveling to every corner of the world, it is impossible to complete the collection of all illustrations. However, Bailin didn't plan to show this question to Lulu. He basically figured out the background of the second Demon King, and he suddenly became quite confused. It's bad luck to take the initiative to find these big bosses, but they all want to rule mankind or destroy the world. Even if they go to the sky, they can't avoid these problems. As soon as he thought about the option of surviving, the judge brought Bailin back to reality with a sentence: "The treasure of the sun god will attract the minions of the old ruler, and he will actively come to find you, control you, and assimilate you. You don't have much time, but you are not fighting alone. In the order created by the pantheon, once the protection of faith is damaged, there will naturally be a mechanism to deal with it, and other awakened people will appear, and you will meet. Bai Lin retreated from the soul state in a daze, feeling weak all over, almost collapsed and fell down, but the summoning illustration book on his shoulder shone slightly. Bai Lin felt some warmth and gave him some strength. But Lulu was not so comfortable. She was pale and staggered. Bai Lin supported her. At the touched part, she moved her arm in embarrassment. Lulu supported Bai Lin's chest with her arm, and it took nearly 2 minutes to recover. That. I can stand by myself. Lulu's face regained its color, even a little flushed, and said in a low voice. Bai Lin quickly let go of Lulu's body, and changed the topic as if nothing had happened. I'm afraid this is a serious situation that endangers all wizards and muggles. If the Seeker family can launch an intelligence network and try to find these awakened ones, it should be helped to deal with the crisis. Lulu didn't know what she was thinking, she seemed to be taken aback. She glanced at Bai Lin and said, Cousin Kaylee, I will let Kaka cooperate with you, and he will notify you as soon as there is any news. Chapter 92, Illustration Evolution. When Bai Lin heard Kaka's name, he felt a little unnatural, and thought that you can contact me by yourself. That bitch made labor and management feel very insecure. But I just thought about it, it's not good to talk to Lulu directly, after all, the two of them are not even friends because of their acquaintance. That, last time Grandpa was attacked, I haven't thanked you yet. Lulu said suddenly. Bai Lin didn't expect to change the subject suddenly, scratched his head and said, it's nothing. I also happened to meet him at the right time, how could I not save him? Let's talk about the assassin, do you have anything to say? Before Bai Lin finished speaking, Lulu suddenly came over and kissed Bai Lin's lips softly. Bai Lin felt his head go down immediately. He is not the first brother in love. He kissed Catherine so many times, yes, but this time the feeling is very different, gentle and seductive, with a little excitement, guilt and even a little shame. Labor and management actually gave my cousin, although it was only in name. This is my first kiss. Let's take it as a thank you to my cousin. Lulu blushed and said. Labor and management want your first kiss to be useful, why don't you give me a bunch of galleons? By the way, you were born in Northern Europe and grew up in Safa, and you still have your first kiss at the age of 20, are you afraid that I am a primary school student? Bai Lin complained silently in his heart. Lulu wanted to say something else, but Bai Lin suddenly stayed on the spot, because in a place that Lulu couldn't see, the summoning illustration actually changed drastically in the air. It was originally a tome with a gold border, but it is changing its shape drastically. The pages of the book turn into golden spots of light, and then flow to the top of the ancient book, forming a new device. Yes, it is a device with a shell, a mechanical core, and a display. If other wizards see it, they may not recognize what it is, but Bai Lin traveled back from 2021. This step is a pad with a big screen. As the tome slowly disappeared, this local gold pad +++ was also cast, and a new system prompt was displayed on it. Due to the activation of special events, 2516 illustration points are automatically consumed, and the upgrade of the summoning illustration system is completed. The opening ratio of computing power in the system is 11.32%, it should be that the points are not enough, and only part of the computing power can be released. Related function adjustments are detailed in the description. Bai Lin Ling Kong clicked to see, good guy, the adjustment instructions are tens of thousands of words, he decided to go back and study it, but two special functions are very eye-catching, you can see it at a glance, the first is to recruit teammates, and the other is the Void Beast pen. Cousin Carrie. Carrie. Lulu walked up to Bai Lin and shook his shoulders. Bai Lin came back to his senses, saw Lulu's anxious face, and said with some embarrassment, aha, I'm fine, I'm still digesting the words of the judge. Lulu pursed her lips and said, Cousin Carrie seems to be very interested in lawbreakers. The topic finally returned to what Bai Lin cared about. He nodded quickly and said, that kind of secret weapon and armor is too powerful, enough to subvert the power system of the wizarding world. Lulu said with a smile in her eyes, I didn't expect that Cousin Kaylee still has the world in his heart, and the issues he cares about are all big things. It's really a waste of talent for Grandpa to let you be the director of a zoo. Bai Lin was a little embarrassed, but Lulu continued, the lawbreakers have also been passed down for thousands of years. It first came from the hatred left over from the religious wars in the Crusades era. Modern lawbreakers believe that North Africa and Central Asia muggles in many countries have suffered from wars, and these wars stem from the scramble for resources. Dark wizards played the role of behind-the-scenes black hands, so they recruited a large number of extreme people who hate dark wizards, and established a modern law-breaking writers' association. Originally, the Lawbreakers Association was mainly active in Egypt and Central Asia. In order to avoid direct conflicts with the Wizarding Society, or to accumulate pressure, it mainly played the role of protecting Muggles from black wizards, such as Cairo's lawbreakers. The association cooperates deeply with the authorities. Once a black wizard enters the urban area of Cairo, he will be chased by lawbreakers. Until the birth of the secret ordnance, the production of this kind of secret ordnance was extremely difficult, and a lot of alchemy was used. The set of secret heavy armor of Caesar, the captain of the Cairo Spellbreaker Action Team, has been accumulated for at least 3 generations before it can almost achieve magic immunity. Not to mention mass production, even if another set is built, it may take decades. Bai Lin asked curiously, but that female assassin's 98K doesn't look like it took decades to build it. Lulu also frowned and said, perhaps the lawbreaker has mastered some new alchemy, which greatly speeds up the production efficiency of secret weapons, but even so, there are less than 10 known secret weapons. It's a threat, but to say it's subverting the entire wizarding world, the Ministry of Magic says it's completely alarmist. Bai Lin nodded and said, magic immune armor must be more difficult to make than weapons that can destroy magic shields. If the Ministry of Magic can master the secret technology, then the Dark Lord is nothing to fear. Lulu spread her hands and said, since the female killer escaped, the Lawbreakers organization disappeared overnight. The Ministry of Magic can't talk to her, so they can only arrest the killer. Unless she commits another crime, it may be an unsolved case. Bai Lin said thoughtfully, the crime will be committed again in a short period of time. The killer who has spent so much painstaking training and the equipment he built cannot be just to kill a few ordinary officials and Elder Ross. I am worried that if they don't move, they will die. Another move may be a big move. Suddenly, Bai Lin and Lulu looked at each other and almost said in unison, the Quidditch World Cup. At this time, the door of the secret room was finally opened. The one-eyed and bald-headed Rose was obviously relieved to see that Lulu was safe and sound, and led the two of them back to the ground. A servant soon brought 2 bowls of hot soup. Lulu frowned and held it in her hand. Bai Lin took it and saw the dark and viscous liquid. At this time, several very modern electronic fonts appeared in front of Bai Lin's eyes. Obtain soul solidifying herbal soup, soul strength after taking it +1. Elder Ross said, children, drink it. Entering the magic sphere multiple times will cause unclear damage to the human soul. This bowl of soup can alleviate this damage, but you should not enter the magic sphere again within a year. Bai Lin saw that the system recognized it, endured an indescribable strange smell, and drank the medicinal soup in one gulp, but Lulu lingered and drank it for nearly 10 minutes. After drinking the medicinal soup, Bai Lin felt uncomfortable in his mouth, but his head felt a lot easier. He suddenly realized that it might be because the Seeker family possessed this soul-fixing herbal soup, which could effectively fight against the soul-harming Dementors. So as to manage Azkaban. With Lulu recounting what he had seen in the magic ball to Elder Ross, Bai Lin hurriedly bid farewell to Ross and his grandson. He wanted to find a place where no one was around to study the upgraded version of the summoning guide, and prepare for the upcoming summer vacation. Prepare for the Quidditch World Cup. Before leaving, Lulu gave Bai Lin a small stack of sticky notes. Bai Lin saw that it was the note that Phoenix used to send text messages to Kaka, and put it in his pocket. Not too much. What is the most important thing in the 21st century? Information. Chapter 93. The Destruction of the Black Witch Society. On the way back to Hogsmeade, the summoning illustrated book gave off a warning light. Bai Lin opened it and saw the words on the screen. Successfully released the World Mission, the old ones. World Mission, a large-scale mission that needs to be completed by all awakened people on the planet, and set up a World Mission contribution value. Completing the side missions in the World Mission will receive a World Mission contribution value, which can be directly exchanged for rewards with the control system. Old Dominator, Grokwa, a minion of the Old Dominator Haster, arrived at the Wizarding World through a meteor, and he will accumulate power to open the gate of the Dark Empire. At that time, the Earth EZ0769 will be dominated by the Old ruled by. Acceptable side missions. 1. Recruit teammates. Successfully recruit 5 teammates and get 200 contribution points. 2. Every time you kill an ordinary member of the Hottas Order, you will get 300 contribution points. 3. For every elite member of Hottas cult who is killed, 800 contribution points will be obtained. 4. For every fragment of old sun boundary steel destroyed, 1000 contribution points will be obtained. 5. Assault on the Shadow, destroy the assembly of the Haster Order, get the King in Yellow. Note, this book will corrupt human sanity, and get 3000 contribution points. There are also various explanations and explanations, which made Bai Lin dizzy and finally returned to Hogsmeade. Bai Lin was exhausted. After making out with Catherine, he told her the prophecy of the 3 demon kings. It took Catherine a while to digest, and she obviously panicked. You mean, are you going to be their enemy? Bai Lin said helplessly, I'm afraid they will come to trouble me. I'm not worried about Voldemort, the main thing is the second devil, I have something he wants. Catherine froze for a moment, then suddenly stood up and said, why don't we run away? Go to a small country without wizards or something. Bai Lin shook his head and said, I have a secret that no one has ever told. I want to form a combat team to deal with these terrible crises. Can you help me? Catherine's expression was painful, but in the end, she took a few steps back, as if she had made some serious decision. Kellen, let's separate. Bai Lin looked at Catherine in surprise, she was already in tears. Obviously just now you and I were passionately in love, but now they are facing separation. Bai Lin seemed to understand that Catherine only wanted to live a peaceful life, just like she, a top student at Bosbaton School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, ran a small tailor shop in Hogsmeade and lived an ordinary and quiet life. Getting along with each other often made her take risks, so she must be very tired. Perhaps after the age of 50 or 60, Bai Lin will also want to live such a peaceful life, but now he is not willing to remain anonymous. From this point of view, he and Catherine will not be able to get together after all. Bai Lin didn't know how he returned to the staff's dormitory from Hogsmeade. He felt that half of his soul was lost. From meeting Catherine's father on the train to the scene of just breaking up, it was like a slideshow. It was also spinning rapidly in front of his eyes, and his thoughts flew up to the bright starry sky as the clock struck midnight, drifting to the past world that was almost forgotten. Sun God, why did you choose me? It's a pity that no one answered him, and the summoning illustration book glowed with a faint golden light, as if reminding him that he shouldered the important task of the entire wizarding world's survival. In the next few days, Bai Lin didn't even want to open the summoning illustration book, and went to class in a daze. The students were guessing what happened to him, and many girls guessed that he was broken in love. This made them regretful, and even a little excited. But Bai Lin didn't want to open their letters, and threw them all in the cabinet in the staff lounge. Until the Daily Prophet broadcast a major news, the Black Witches hiding in the south of France encountered a group of Muggle troops known as lawbreakers at a rally. At least 20 members of the Black Witches were killed at the scene, and more than 70 people were injured, and the leader Babu Nar died on the spot. The assailant walked away, unharmed, and disappeared again. This is like throwing a grenade into a calm lake in the magic world. Some wizards insist that the Black Witch Society is a wizard gang composed of thieves, gangsters, and murderers. It is a cancerous tumor in the world. But to eliminate harm for the people. Another part of wizards thinks that this is the prelude to Muggles' war against the wizarding world. Muggles have mastered the ability to kill wizards on a large scale and get out of their bodies. This is enough to shake the foundation of wizarding society, and it is safe without wizards. Bai Lin never expected it. A few days ago, he thought that the lawbreakers would cause a big event at the Quidditch World Cup. He didn't expect to attack the Dark Witches directly. It was destroyed overnight. This also strengthened Bai Lin's inference. The lawbreaker is no longer a simple blood debt, but from hating black wizards who hurt him to hating all people who use black magic, either using black magic or black wizards. The meaning of black wizard should be a person who uses black magic to commit crimes, otherwise the Durmstrang School of Witchcraft and Magic, which teaches black magic, would be the cradle of criminals. How could it be possible to be in the world of mainstream wizards? In the end they will want to kill all wizards. The lawbreaker, Voldemort, the Hogwarts Order of the Second Devil, and the Third Devil who is still unknown. With so many enemies, Bai Lin simply didn't know how to face them. In the restaurant at noon, the children were still noisy, gossip, and tasted delicious food carefree, while Bai Lin sat in the corner and couldn't eat a bite, until a light flashed by his side, and Phoenix appeared beside him, the domesticated one. Wisps are free to apparate at Hogwarts. My master. Zwabai's friend left a letter. Phoenix said with some distress. Zwabai left, and there were only him and Dobby left in the commissary. How can this business continue? Will the owner be furious when the performance declines? He thought of a lot of tragic endings. Bai Lin numbly took the note in Phoenix's hand and looked at it. He couldn't help but be surprised. This guy's Wabai went to find trouble with the lawbreaker alone. He said that he was a few dead members of the Black Witch Society. When he was young, he and the lawbreakers had no mutual hatred. Do you know where he went? Bai Lin asked Phoenix. Phoenix shook his head and said, Friends, Wabai is an outstanding space mage, his trace is very elusive. Phoenix tried hard, but he couldn't find it. Although Bai Lin and Zhou Bai do not have a deep friendship, most of the time they are related to superiors and subordinates, but Bai Lin already regards Zhou Bai as one of his few friends. Bai Lin almost fell for the trick, but when he met a lawbreaker, such as Caesar, Bai Lin thought that he might be in danger, so he couldn't help feeling anxious. Chapter 94 Void Beast Pen. I hope he is in danger and can use the ability of the mirror to get away. Bai Lin was anxious, but he had no other way. He could only write on the note sent by Lulu, to Lulu, hope to break the law. The reporter or the mirror person Zhou Bai will tell me the news as soon as possible. Tear off the note and throw it in the air, and the note dissipated immediately. Bai Lin shrugged, completely ignorant of the principle of this kind of information transmission, and could only rely on quantum mechanics. Although he didn't know how to find Zhubai, the news of the Black Witch's demise was like pouring cold water on Bai Lin's head, which cheered him up inexplicably. After all, the lawbreaker attack happened in France on the other side of the English Channel, so it had little impact on Hogwarts. For Dumbledore and the Order of the Phoenix, the number one enemy was still Voldemort's remnant forces. During the lunch break, Bai Lin hid in an empty lounge and asked Phoenix to give him the wind. Then he opened the summoning illustration book, read the update instructions carefully, and suddenly found that the biggest change was actually the recruit teammates to line up the Void Stables. Void Beast Pen, creatures sealed by the illustrated book will be sealed in a special space. In this space, the living organisms are in a state of survival and death, and the activity of the biological organisms will tend to stagnate. The summoned illustrated book uses computing power to analyze the evolution of the sealed organisms. Mechanism and characteristics, participate in the interaction of the array map of the tree of life in the world, and obtain the energy feedback provided by the array map, thereby improving the corresponding attributes of the host. Increasing the types of sealed creatures can increase the computing power of the summoning illustration system, and the computing power can be increased to 20%, which will reawaken the sealed creatures and create habitat space. Teammates recruited by the host will have access to the stables. Just a few words shocked Bai Lin. He always thought that the sealed magical animals were directly killed and transformed into his magic power. This made him feel a lot of guilt towards the sealed creatures. Looking at it this way, it seems that this summoning illustration system is a scientific research device for collecting information. It seems that in the universe, there is a miracle called Array Map of the Tree of Life in 10,000 worlds. It is collecting biological information in various worlds and feeding back energy to the collected information. It is similar to paying for credit. Bai Lin doesn't care about the use of biological information, but he is very happy that through the Void Beast Pen, he can see the mandrakes, mice, acromantulas, overlord octopuses, iron-bellied dragons that were once sealed by him. And Peter, who had become spotted, slept peacefully in a void, and Bai Lin could clearly feel that they were all still alive. This made Bai Lin more or less motivated, and after the computing power reaches 20%, he can create a habitat space like Newt and fantastic beasts and where to find them. All magical creatures that have not been collected will be sealed again. But before Bai Lin went out to kill the quartet, Hagrid approached the door with a gloomy expression. Phoenix wanted to stop him, but seeing the figure of this giant, Phoenix said weakly, "You didn't knock on the door." "It's okay, Phoenix, Hagrid is my friend." Bai Lin smiled, stood up and welcomed Hagrid in. "Friend? Kaelin. How long are you going to lie to me? Aragog is also Hagrid's friend. You killed him." Hagrid was so excited that his voice was deafening. If it wasn't for Firenze, the centaur, made a slip of the tongue, and Hagrid was kept in the dark. "Calm down. Aragog is only sealed, it's still alive." Bai Lin quickly comforted him. Hagrid was obviously taken aback, but he still said angrily, "The Ministry of Magic's animal research is indeed a lie. What kind of seal? The living creatures are just lost by you. You turned them back." Although still questioning, but the tone has been softened compared to the two sentences just now. Bai Lin gave Phoenix a wink, and Phoenix immediately poured 2 cups of hot tea for the two, but there was no chair big enough to accommodate Hagrid's buttocks in the lounge, so Bai Lin could only stand with him. Bai Lin said, I have joined the Order of the Phoenix. All I do is to deal with the Dark Lord and other dangerous enemies. I hope Hagrid can understand me. Hagrid doesn't want to understand Kalin. Hagrid just wants to know if Kalin lied to him, and if these animals were brutally killed. Hagrid was still very angry. Balin scratched his head and said, "There is a way to prove it to you, but this is very complicated. To put it simply, you have to face the challenge of the 3 future Devil Kings with me. You should have heard you have fulfilled the prophecy of the 3 Demon Kings." Hagrid said frankly, "Don't use the Dark Lord to scare Hagrid. Hagrid is not afraid of them. If they dare to come, Hagrid will show them a good look. It's about the 2 of us now, prove it to Hagrid. Otherwise, I will apply a new duel." Balin thought for a while, and realized that Hagrid is indeed an excellent fighter, with a strong sense of justice and hatred for evil. It would be of great help if he could become a teammate, so he sent a teammate invitation to Hagrid. Hagrid didn't even see what words appeared in front of his eyes, so he pointed at the words, "Hagrid accepts." Immediately, he summoned the illustration book to emit a golden light, which shot directly at Hagrid's head. Hagrid was stunned. Countless information poured into his head like a tide, and then a small pad appeared in front of his eyes, like a projection on the system windows on Retina. "You have become a teammate of Balin, Kellen White, and will have the following system permissions. Receive system information, check Void Beast stables, accept side missions shared by the captain. Obtain the Awakened Reward system permission, complete side missions will receive additional personal rewards." This. Hagrid didn't know how to describe what happened to him, and stuttered. "I am the one chosen by the Sun God, and I am destined to fight against the devil who destroys the Wizarding world and the Muggle world, so you can understand, now you are my teammate, you can live your previous life, and you can also assist me to complete the task of fighting against the devil will be rewarded, and you can click on the Void Beast pen to see the creatures sealed by me and why I sealed them." Balin said. Hagrid stretched out his hand in doubt, "I hope Aragog is still here." After a while, Hagrid retreated from the Void Beast pen with a complex expression. He had already seen Aragog's figure and received information from Aragog. The bodily functions and internal organs will kill it at any time. Balin's seal can even be said to have saved it, because when the computing power is sufficient, Balin can wake it up again and even call him out, and like Swafeng, restore him to the most powerful physical condition in his life. Chapter 95. This afternoon was the last Protection of Magical Beasts class of this semester. Hagrid meant to teach the students at the hunting ground, and discuss with Balin about the exam topics for the next week. Balin has been in a daze for the past few days, and now that he thinks about it, something is wrong. The 3 Harrys haven't talked to him for a long time. To be exact, Harry told Balin the prophecy of the 3 Demon Kings. After he returned from Rose Manor, Harry seemed to be avoiding Balin on purpose. "I really don't understand what is going on in the mind of a 13 or 14-year-old child." Hermione, who is usually sticky to him, seems to be preparing for more than a dozen exams, and her feet are almost on the ground. Sometimes Balin looks down from upstairs. Hermione was running with her book bag on her back. This kind of learning spirit really made Balin sigh. No wonder she is the woman who will be the Minister of Magic in the future. And Ron is the same as usual, but he is the only one who sees Balin from a distance and greets him warmly. The Protection of Magical Beasts class in the afternoon was mainly explained by Hagrid. Since Hagrid knew that Aragog was still alive, he was in a much better mood. Of course, even if he was in a bad mood, he would not embarrass the students. Balin thinks it is a clear indication, the exam questions for this class, but the students are not happy at all, because they still can't escape dealing with the 4-foot-long snails. These guys have shed their shells 4 or 5 times. Every time, he will grow up a circle, and his temper will be more irritable. When class was over, Balin patted Ron from behind calmly, and Ron followed Balin to the small woods. Balin asked in a low voice, "I found that Harry has been a little, in a bad mood recently, you know what happened?" "What's the matter?" Ron said distressedly, "Maybe exam week is coming soon, the students are all very irritable, and Hermione won't play with us anymore." Balin thought to himself, "You are such a fool, why would Hermione fall in love with you?" But Ron thought about it for a while and said, "Oh, I see, but Professor, you can't tell Harry that I told you. He may feel a little ashamed." Balin nodded, and Ron said, "He was dreaming again. Just a few days ago, he was not feeling well after that. It seems that he dreamed of a mysterious person. He didn't tell me in detail, he was a little worried telling Dumbledore, or any of the other professors, would make everyone think he's a bit of an underdog. Bai Lin frowned, thinking that something was wrong. If it was before, he would definitely take the initiative to find his own staff. After letting Ron go, Bai Lin counted his days and realized the problem. Didn't Harry see himself digging a grave in his dream? But Harry often dreamed about Voldemort because of Voldemort's soul fragments. Why did he dream that he went to the Riddle Mansion to dig his grave? Unless I and Voldemort went to the Riddle Mansion, Harry's dream in the original book also followed in the footsteps of old Frank and discovered the plot between Voldemort, Peter, and Barty Jr. Of course, he couldn't understand why he dug old Tom's grave. He only felt that he was doing something shameful, so he had a crisis of trust. Bai Lin sighed. He did not rush to prove his innocence, and dragged 13 or 14-year-old Harry to the front line of the war against the three major demon kings, but his dream reminded himself that Voldemort had arrived several months earlier, entered the Riddle Mansion and began the conspiracy against Harry. According to the original plot, Barty Jr. sneaked into Hogwarts and worked as a professor for several months. Old Deng didn't realize that he was also drunk, and took a lot of trouble to make the trophy of the Triwizard Tournament into a portrait, sent Harry to the Riddle Mansion, and asked Bai Lin to tell him why he didn't make a portrait out of something more common, such as the textbooks of the Black Defense class, and let Harry get it directly, and send it away immediately. Why bother to force Harry into the competition for senior students, and try to find a way for him to win, which is full of countless uncertainties. For example, in the first level of Fire Dragon, why does little Barty think that Harry will definitely win if he knows that his opponent is Fire Dragon? For example, in the second level of Underwater Rescue, everyone has their own unique tricks, so how can Harry with a gills win? He also watched the movie. Since the purpose is to teleport Harry away, there should be countless methods with a high success rate, but little Barty chose such an oblique method, and Bai Lin couldn't complain. Although Bai Lin can teleport to the Riddle Mansion at any time, and even take Dumbledore with him to catch Voldemort by surprise, but if the Horcruxes are not wiped out in a day, it will be useless to kill him, and he will not know where he will appear next time, jumped onto the back of someone's head. When thinking about it more and more, a piece of sticky note appeared in front of Bai Lin, and it swayed left and right a few times, for fear that Bai Lin would not see it. Bai Lin took it over and took a look, but it was a message sent to him by Kaka. To Kylan, there seems to be a disagreement among the lawbreakers. Some people have entered Lombardy in northern Italy, and another group has just disappeared again. Southern France borders northern Italy. It is logical for the lawbreakers to flee to Italy after committing crimes. They do not have the convenient teleportation ability of wizards, so they can only use Muggle vehicles. It should not be difficult to find their traces. Bai Lin stroked his thoughts, and suddenly thought of a detail. Spellbreakers are Muggles, and there is no magic power in his body, so apparition and flow powder will definitely not work, and secret text equipment cannot be teleported. If Bai Lin is a lawbreaker, he will transport the secret text equipment to the designated place by freight, and then take a car and boat to avoid the security check to reach the destination, or use the door key to reach the destination. Escaped with a portrait. And where was she going to get the right portrait? When Bai Lin raised his head, he suddenly saw a painting on the wall, showing a knight charging towards a dragon, actually a windmill. In the famous story of Don Quixote, the windmill was imagined by him as an image of a giant dragon. Bai Lin stood up abruptly. It was the ticket to the zoo. The special ticket designed by Lulu when the zoo opened can be sent to the front square of the zoo island. If the lawbreaker buys a few of these tickets, he can arrive at the zoo anytime and anywhere, and then follow the crowd back to Paris through the two-way gate. This is why the reformer Kiki chose to go to Charlie Avenue for the first attack, because it was too convenient to commit crimes. I don't know how Lulu would feel when she knew that her design was used to assassinate Elder Ross. Bai Lin may not be able to control the wind and rain in other places, but he must not be able to bear the tricks in his territory. Bai Lin rushed out of the lounge, rode a broom and flew towards Hogsmeade. He wanted to rush to the zoo as soon as possible. Since a group of magic breakers had just disappeared, it was very likely that they would use the Fire Dragon doll to teleport to the zoo. After breaking up with Catherine, it was somewhat embarrassing to use the underground secret passage of the clothing store, but Bai Lin couldn't care less. Chapter 96. Homeless Kiki. When Bai Lin arrived at the zoo, it was almost closing time. The sunset in the sky was very beautiful, but Bai Lin was not in the mood to appreciate the beautiful scenery at all. He found a higher position, glanced over, and immediately found a 7 or 8-year-old children are playing with red dragon dolls on the grass. Most of the dragon dolls that were sold before the opening were used on the opening day. During this time, almost no tourists have sent over with dolls, so this dragon doll is quite eye-catching. Bai Lin walked over quickly and gave the child a chocolate candy customized in the shape of a jellyfish. The child immediately told him that the doll was picked up on a bench in the square not long ago. Bai Lin didn't dare to delay, he just stepped on the broom and flew to the exit of the zoo. About 1,000 tourists were queuing up to leave the venue. Everyone looked up curiously at Bai Lin, who was in a hurry. Many people recognized him and pointed to him to say hello. Bai Lin could only wave his hand in a friendly manner, as if he was sending the tourists away, but his eyes were scanning every tourist's figure quickly. Most of the tourists are big families, some even have 3 generations of grandparents and grandchildren, and there are also some young couples. After all, the Magic Zoo is indeed a family fun place where you can get close to nature and watch magical creatures. Bai Lin's goal is to those combinations that are not a family at first glance, such as 4 or 5 big men. One doll can be used by up to 5 people at the same time. If they happen to come from Egypt or Central Asia, then 9 out of 10 have not escaped. However, Bai Lin turned around a few times, but did not see a similar target. Bai Lin's mood changed from excitement to anxiety, from anxiety to disappointment. Just when he was about to give up, he suddenly saw a familiar figure. A girl in sportswear was carrying an old backpack and was walking into the two-way gate leaving the zoo with her back facing Bai Lin. That figure made Bai Lin startled. Bai Lin's brain turned, and he instantly thought of who she was. She was the spellbreaker female killer riding a sphinx with 98k. Regardless of whether he was in the line of tourists, Bai Lin swooped down, jumped off the broom, and landed in front of the nearest two-way door, which caused a burst of exclamation from the tourists. "Sorry!" Bai Lin yelled back, and got into the two-way door. The goblin who was in charge of maintaining order looked dumbfounded, wondering what kind of nerves the director had lost. A burst of colorful brilliance flowed in front of Bai Lin's eyes. After a while, he was down to earth, and he had appeared on Charles Street again. The street was full of people, tourists and pedestrians coming and going in an endless stream, and people of all skin colors mixed together, making Bai Lin dazzled for a while. After finally getting out of the crowd, the female killer had already been lost. Bai Lin didn't have time to notify the Aura office. He was so excited that he immediately judged that the female killer would leave Charles Street as soon as possible to hide in the world of Muggles. The wanted person will feel a lot of psychological pressure when they see it. The female killer's small backpack obviously can't fit much equipment. She definitely doesn't want to fight the wizard head-on. Bai Lin went straight to the exit of Charles Street, and from a distance, he saw the figure of the female killer. At this time, she got a Bulgarian team jersey from nowhere. Bulgarian team is the favorite to win the Quidditch World Cup, and mixed with a group of among the fans, walking outside Charles Street. But Bai Lin didn't recognize her by her appearance at all, but the familiarity brought by her whole figure. Even after changing her clothes, Bai Lin recognized her at a glance. What's more, she was wearing a jersey on the upper body, but trousers on the lower body, which should be to cover her mechanical prosthesis. Bai Lin was not in a hurry to startle the female killer. He wanted to make sure if she had any accomplices nearby, so he followed her from a distance, but she seemed to be very vigilant, and often glanced behind her from the side, and almost found Bai Lin following her a few times. Bai Lin carefully followed them for a few blocks. It would be more beneficial to Bai Lin when it got dark. As a wizard, it would be too embarrassing if he couldn't even keep up with a muggle. The group of fans went straight into the bar on the corner of the street, and the female killer followed her in, but soon she changed her clothes and came out, and Bai Lin, who was standing in the shadow of the building across the street, could see her face clearly. She seemed to be of mixed Slavs and Arabs, with a good face and small features, but there seemed to be some inseparable sadness between her brows. She was 17 or 18 years old at the most, and she was wearing a student uniform that is very common in France at this time, and she looked like a student at Sorbonne University or Descartes University. However, Bai Lin has locked onto her tightly. No matter what attire he changes, he can't escape Bai Lin's eyes. Bai Lin thought that she would go to the lawbreaker's stronghold in Paris now, but after walking with her for 2 hours, Bai Lin found that she was just wandering aimlessly, neither drinking water nor eating. Even Bai Lin felt so hungry that her chest was pressed against her back, but she didn't intend to stop. As she walked, the female killer gradually seemed to relax her vigilance, not even noticing that Bai Lin was only a dozen meters away from her. In the end, the female killer walked to the bank of the Seine, looked at the bustling downtown Paris in the distance, and even cried on the railing. What kind of trouble is this going to do? Bai Lin was sweating, Could it be that there was a disagreement in some lawbreaker organization in the family, and they parted ways, so that she was the only one in her group? How could Bai Lin let go of such a great opportunity, using the shadow of the tree to quickly approach her, and when the female killer reacted, Bai Lin's wand had already touched her neck. "Don't move. Miss Kikai," Bai Lin said, originally wanted to just pass out, but if he used magic rashly in Paris, it is very likely that the staff of the French Ministry of Magic will find out, and it seems that he will take the fainted female killer with him. In other places, Yazi's painting style is a bit wrong. The female killer was startled, and quickly stretched her hand towards her lower back, but Bai Lin took a step ahead of her, grabbed her arm and said, "We have fought, you should know that even if you hit you with a sword, you can't beat me, what's more, you don't seem to be wearing secret armor." The female killer turned her elbow and swept Bai Lin's face, not caring about Bai Lin's threat at all. Bai Lin felt a little helpless against her stubborn resistance. He tilted his head, clamped her arm with his shoulder and chin, stepped forward, and was about to hook her leg and throw her sideways. But the female killer's body was very flexible, she withdrew her clasped arms like a snake, and pressed her knees against Bai Lin's lifeblood. Bai Lin was taken aback. "You girl doesn't play cards according to the rules, your leg is a mechanical prosthesis, the little brother who is the top laborer, Lao Zi will have a good life for the rest of his life." Chapter 97. The Second Awakener. Bai Lin had no choice but to let go of the female killer, and took a quick step back, but the female killer was acting obedient after taking advantage of it. She had already pulled out 2 spikes from her back waist with both hands, and stepped forward to attack Bai Lin's chest. Bai Lin was speechless for a while. It's only 9 o'clock, even though this place is relatively desolate, people pass by from time to time, you just go straight to the guy. "Do you want labor and management to fight you 4 rounds? Bai Lin couldn't care if he was discovered by the French Ministry of Magic. He pointed his wand at the female killer's legs and said, "The legs are locked." The female killer obviously didn't expect Bai Lin's spell to be so short. She rushed forward aggressively, but her legs were forcibly joined together in an instant, and she fell to the ground, almost hitting her face on the ground. "Damn dark wizard!" the female killer cursed. Bai Lin stepped forward and handed over her double thorns, took out the rope from the exorcism gift bag he bought at the travel company, tied the hands of the female killer instantly, picked her up, and directly launched Bai Lin's apparition learned by Zubina. At this time, apart from practicing, Bai Lin used apparition outside for the first time. This is the most difficult magic that Bai Lin has ever learned, because it is not like ordinary spells, and Bai Lin can take advantage of Chinese spells, like the summoning spell. As long as he focused his attention on the summoning book, the book would assist him in summoning creatures. Operating requires the wizard to have a very clear purpose, strong determination, and deliberate transformation of his body from substance to nothingness and from nothingness to substance. Bai Lin experimented a few times, and he was able to teleport to a place he was very familiar with. Of course, if Phoenix or Zhubai were present, Bai Lin would rather be lazy, because if something goes wrong with apparition, it will cause embarrassment and discomfort for him. It is that I never want to experience the second time. It is easy to cause splits. At this time, Bai Lin must move quickly to avoid being seen by Muggles or the Ministry of Magic. No matter who sees it, there will always be a lot of trouble. Bai Lin decided to have a trial by himself first, and then decide whether to hand over the female killer to the Ministry of Magic. Deep in his heart he still sympathized with the female killer. After all, Elder Ross was not a kind person and had already recovered. Bai Lin didn't have any hatred for the female killer. Instead, he sympathized with her experience of being massacred by a black wizard. Love, if this happened to Bai Lin, he might be even more cruel than her. The two appeared in the underground warehouse of the canteen of the zoo. When Zhubai was asked to build this underground warehouse, Bai Lin was prepared. Maybe it would be used as a temporary base in the future, so the place is spacious and no matter how noisy it is, upstairs, Dobby and Phoenix couldn't hear anything. Bai Lin waved his magic wand, and the roof of the originally dark warehouse glowed with fluorescence. This is a kind of magic paint, which can be lit up with fluorescent flashing spells. The warehouse illuminated is like daytime. After all, in a confined underground space, torches cannot be used come to light. Bai Lin believes that the wizarding society that refuses to use electricity will gradually lag behind Muggle technology in productivity and other aspects sooner or later, and wizards are not aware of the progress of the outside world at all, and they are still living in the early 19th century, or even the middle of the 18th century. Bai Lin dispelled the female killer's levitation technique, but he didn't humiliate her. He just let her fall on a chair with armrests, locked her limbs, and dispelled the silent spell cast on her. Damn black wizard! You must die! The female killer Kikai cursed. Bai Lin picked his ear with his wand and said, "Stop it, I told you last time that I never hurt a muggle." He thought of Aunt Petunia's family that he had punished, and made up for it in his heart. One sentence, they don't count. On the contrary, I also got rid of more than a dozen evil black wizards. Regarding the issue of evil black wizards, our goals are the same. Bai Lin said. The female killer Kikai didn't trust Bai Lin so easily, she still couldn't stop insulting and mocking, "Kill me. You won't get anything from me. I curse you." Silence and silence. Bai Lin rolled his eyes, and sure enough he couldn't communicate with an angry woman. He ignored the murderous eyes of the female killer Kikai. Shiran found a small table and placed it not far in front of her, took out a novel and read it, and summoned Phoenix, and soon Phoenix brought a table. The delicious food came down from upstairs. Although I was a little curious about how Bai Lin caught a woman, the house elf would not question the owner. He arranged the food neatly on the table and poured a glass for Bai Lin before leaving. Aromatic red wine. I'm from the east. Bai Lin ignored the female killer's complex eyes as she looked at the table full of delicacies, and said while eating the grilled lamb chops, "I was found by the Seeker family a year ago, and they said I was a family heir. Zhu, no matter what you say, I want to come to Britain, and I only want to get a high salary, so I come here to make a living." He took a big mouthful of mutton, and his mouth was full of oil. This grilled lamb chops is a new dish in the canteen, called Dragon's Breakfast, because sheep and deer are the favorite food of fire dragons besides human meat. Romanian ceratopsians also use the horn pierces the sheep, and then breathes out dragon flames to roast the sheep, and then tastes it elegantly. On a whim, Bai Lin used the fire dragon from the zoo to grill the lamb chops. Although the surface would be a little burnt, but the carbonized part was removed, the meat inside was quite tender. This dish also replaced the spicy chicken and became the most popular in the canteen. Food, wizards can't eat it in other places. It can also consume too much energy and destructive desire of fire dragons, which can be said to kill two birds with one stone. Bai Lin continued on his own, "It was only when I arrived in Britain that I found my lifelong goal. I want to eliminate the minions of the Dark Lord. I don't have any hostility towards you lawbreakers, even if you almost killed me, that cheap big uncle. Even old Ross, I don't regard you as an enemy. I just think that blood debts are justified, but most of the black wizards are not evil wizards. They just took a bluffing name. The lawmen have completely exterminated them, which has completely exceeded the concept of revenge against the dark wizards. This is an act of provoking war. What do you want to do next? Directly attack the French Ministry of Magic." The female killer Kikai stared wide-eyed, seeming a little panicked. "Fuck me, you guys are not really planning to attack the French Ministry of Magic, are you?" Bai Lin was drinking red wine and almost choked on the female killer Kiki's expression. "I'll undo the spell for you. I hope you'll be reasonable. Let's have a good talk." Bai Lin said, undoing both the leg-locking spell and the silent spell, and put the rope that bound Kikai's arms into his pocket. "Let me ask you a question first. Why did you separate from the big team? You didn't even bring your equipment." Bai Lin motioned Kikai to sit at the table and eat something. Kikai gave Bai Lin a hard look at first, but she sat up anyway, picked up a turkey leg, and started to gobble it up. "I had a very real nightmare," Kikai suddenly said. "A weirdo with an octopus face established a mysterious church, plotting to destroy the whole world." "What?" Bai Lin almost spit out the mutton in his mouth. "Are you an awakened one?" Chapter 98. You must be like them, thinking that I am crazy. Yes. I am crazy. But don't think that I will tell you the secret of the lawbreaker. Kikai said bitterly while eating chicken legs. In fact, about your dream, maybe I can give you an answer. Bai Lin said with a strange expression. Even if he was killed, he would never have imagined that the first awakened person he met was a lawbreaker killer. Kikai was taken aback for a moment, her face full of disbelief. Bai Lin said, "We have enough time to explain this matter clearly. Maybe I am not a good storyteller, but please be patient and listen to me in detail." He picked out the important part of the fairy tale told by the trial mentor, and repeated it to Kikai, and finally said, 50 years ago, there was a very evil and ferocious dark wizard named Grindelwald. Wizards rule muggles, that is, the world of ordinary people, but it was other kind wizards who stopped him and imprisoned him in a Hungarian prison, the old castle that was hit by a meteor some time ago is that prison. He died. Kikai was also attracted by Bai Lin's story. She had an intuition that Bai Lin did not lie to her. Death is his relief. In fact, he has repented for the rest of his life. Wizards are also human beings, but they have some talents compared to ordinary people. Many wizards were born in ordinary people's families. Whether it is a wizard or an ordinary person, there are good people and bad people, there are careerists and benefactors. Blood does not represent good and evil, behavior can represent it. Bai Lin said. He paused and said, sadly, the Dark Lord did not die, and that meteor was not a mere meteorite, but brought an alien evil spirit. A minion of the old ruler, that is, your dream. It's not a dream, it's a real tragedy that happened somewhere in the world. That alien evil spirit has already possessed the Dark Lord and turned into that octopus-faced monster. Kikai had already stopped chewing, with a terrified expression on her face. She was obviously frightened by Bai Lin's words. If she hadn't experienced that dream herself, and someone told her a story about some evil spirit from the sky, she would definitely think that the other party was a liar or a psychopath, but now he already believed Bai Lin's words in his heart. Tell me about your dream. Maybe I can analyze some information from it. I don't know anything about this enemy's ability now. If I fight rashly, I'm afraid I will be caught off guard. Bai Lin tried his best to make his tone full of sincerity. I really want to get all the information that will help solve the mountain in his heart. Whispers, whispers that make people crazy. I don't know what they are talking about. Every time I have this kind of dream, it starts with that weird whisper. At the beginning, a person wearing a dark yellow cloak appeared on a farm. He controlled a cow, and then pounced on it to kill it, stretching out dozens of octopus-like tentacles from his hood, sucking the flesh and blood of the cow. Kikai recalled her nightmare with a pale face. The monster attacked the farmer's family, but instead of eating them, it spit out a pearl-like egg and stuffed it into their mouths. After a while, octopus-like growths grew on the heads of the farmer's family. Tentacles, they have been transformed into monsters. Kikai gritted her teeth. It's a parasite. Bai Lin said, it's like an alien, parasitic on the existing life forms on this planet, allowing these alien creatures to adapt to the Earth's environment as quickly as possible. The group of monsters disappeared into the forest. After a few days, I dreamed of them again. They were in a church, dozens of people had been transformed, they put on yellow robes, and kept chanting strange language. The first monster took out a book, and he read it in ancient Latin. The Lord in Yellow. After Kikai finished speaking, she shivered, grabbed Bai Lin's red wine glass, drinking it all down seemed to make her feel a little bit better, recalling this dream made her feel quite painful. The Lord in Yellow is Haster among the old rulers, a mysterious alien god who symbolizes the wind. This alien evil spirit is his weakest minion, but it is helpless. For human beings, the weakest minions are very difficult to deal with, and they hide in the dark. Although they have transformed so many people, they have not been discovered and confirmed by human beings. This is also the most difficult factor for them. Bai Lin pondered. Your forehead, can you show me? Kikai said suddenly. Bai Lin was taken aback. There was a scar on his forehead that looked like a cat's claw-shaped iron. It was the imprint he brought from the earth he was born on. Every time he touched this scar, he would think of the train station. That black cat. At Catherine's suggestion, Bai Lin grew his bangs longer, and usually covered up the scar. It seemed that Kikai caught a glimpse of it inadvertently during the battle. I heard that the sun god who saved my life left it for me. Bai Lin said, lifting the bangs on his forehead, and leaned closer to show Kikai. Really? You are the messenger of Ra? Kikai leaned over and looked at Bai Lin's scar carefully, making sure that it was not a fake stuck on it, and finally said with a complex expression. Ra? Oh. By the way, you are an Egyptian. Bai Lin said, the name of the sun god is very different in different countries. In Egypt, it is the god Ra with the head of an eagle and the body of a man. I dreamed of the sun god when I was a child, he told me to follow Ra's emissary, but the sun god didn't protect my family. They all died at the hands of the black wizard. Kikai gritted her teeth. Bai Lin scratched the back of his head. This is really a knot. If this knot is not untied, it seems difficult for him to recruit Kikai as his team member, but she is a rare awakener. If she has a secret weapon, her combat effectiveness is quite impressive. The last question, Bai Lin said, why did you separate from the other lawbreakers? Kikai frowned, and said hesitantly, I don't want to hurt the innocent. Bai Lin suddenly realized, Caesar has ambitions, he wants to get rid of all wizards. That's right. Kikai looked complicated, and said, you know brother Caesar. Bai Lin still wanted to work hard and said, what are your plans? If you want, you can help me. I want to organize a team to deal with the threat of the Dark Lord. Don't even think about it. Kikai said decisively, how do I know that you don't want to fulfill your ambition? I don't believe anyone, you either kill me or let me go. Bai Lin is like one head and too big. Why is it so hard for the protagonist in other stories to recruit players so smoothly? In the end, Bai Lin had no choice but to let Kikai go. Since he knew she was an awakened person, he couldn't hand her over to the Ministry of Magic and sentence her to life imprisonment or something, right? I hope that as time goes by, Kikai will still fight against Hayster Church and become Bai Lin's teammate. In order to prevent her from living on the streets, Kikai gave her a few £100 back, but Kikai put it in her pocket unceremoniously, and left without looking back. Chapter 99. Watching Kikai disappear at the two-way gate of the zoo gate, Bai Lin did not follow. He believed that the future would be long, and when the threat of the Church of Hayster gradually unfolded, the power of resistance would definitely gather. Now he is too weak and can only he watched Hayster's minions harming people everywhere, but he was powerless. I need to improve my strength as soon as possible. Bai Lin paced back and forth in the small square of the zoo at night, watching the troll security guards on duty at night walking back and forth. Goblins especially like to hire trolls as security guards. The ferocious appearance is a bit intimidating, but the trolls' combat effectiveness and intelligence are really poor. Until Bai Lin saw the open space prepared for the beast arena, he suddenly thought, since the sealed magical animals are only sleeping temporarily after the illustration book is upgraded, why should he be merciful? He found Patrice right away. This wrinkled goblin was wearing pajamas that looked like children's clothes, and appeared in Bai Lin's office with a somewhat impatient expression. I hope there is indeed something important. Patrice doesn't like to be interrupted during his rest time. Patrice's tone was rather unfriendly. It's about the wrestling event. I went back and thought about it. I think your idea is too good. Magic flame really shouldn't be raised like a kitten. Bai Lin organized his words. Let the goblin do it, but now he is trying his best to let Patrice take over, because if Bai Lin seals all the animals in the beast zone, who should be responsible for the loss? Bai Lin was sharpening his sword in his heart, waiting for Patrice to take the bait. Patrice was obviously also interested, sat in front of Bai Lin, poured himself a cup of hot tea unceremoniously. Go on, Mr. Kylan. Bai Lin coughed lightly and said, black magic is not allowed, white magic and cold weapons are allowed, the challenger can challenge any beast in the zoo, the winner will win the prize, and the casualties are at their own risk. I believe in such an exciting project tourists will always be interested. We can even broadcast live. Patrice's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he already thought of the crowd queuing up to bet in front of the arena. Well said. Mr. Kylan, that's exactly what I thought. Let's go together. It's just this live broadcast, what is it? Bai Lin said, just use Muggle video equipment to record it for Muggles to see. Patrice jumped off the chair, paced back and forth in the room, and finally stopped. The goblins will arrange the venue within a week, and they will also publicize it to the entire wizarding world, but what about the challengers? Where is the challenger? It is extremely dangerous to fight a scorpion without using black magic. Where can we find such a fool? Bai Lin patted his chest and said, leave the challenger to me, and I'll let him come to you with my letter of introduction. In addition, I hope the zoo will offer a reward of galleons, and promise not to pursue loss of animals. Patrice clapped his hands, and said with a smile on his face, it's a deal, Mr. Kylan, after the matter is completed, you will get all the proceeds. Bai Lin thought to himself, when your precious fire dragon is sealed, I hope you don't want to fight me hard. Bai Lin agreed with a smile, and discussed the details with Patrice. Patrice said that the entire planning and operation contract will be submitted tomorrow. As long as Bai Lin and Elder Ross sign it, the event will go live immediately, but Bai Lin still needs to report to the Ministry of Magic. Early the next morning, Bai Lin set off for the French Ministry of Magic. He had been to the Aura office once when he was asked to have tea by Blanco last time, but this time he was going to the Department of Magical Law Enforcement and the Magical Law Enforcement Department. Animal Management and Control Department, these two departments to report. After signing a lot of inexplicable documents and solemnly promising not to cause casualties and animal cruelty incidents, it is said that even the Goblet of Fire in the Inter-School League has a project of fighting fire dragons alone, This one is purely useless, Bylin has completed for the project report, it will be up to Patrice to contribute. Just as he was about to return to Charles Avenue with flow powder, a man in a black coat and flat hat stood in front of Bylin. Bylin looked up and saw that he was his old acquaintance Blanco. Blanco's face was gloomy, and his brows were tightly frowned. It should be that the recent events have caused him a lot of trouble. More than 20 members of the Black Witch Society were killed on the spot, which is simply the most important case of this year. Of course Ranko is having a hard time. Kellen White. Blanco called out Bylin's full name, as if even a title was quite embarrassing for him. Director Blanc, it's a pleasure to meet you. What can I do for you? Bylin said politely. Blanco is the boss of Paris's local snake, and maintaining a friendly relationship with him has advantages and disadvantages. I saw you from upstairs, so I wanted to come down to say hello. Blanco seemed hesitant to speak. Bylin thought to himself, shit, are you such a nice person? Thinking about it, Bylin still smiled and said, the director is too polite, you might as well just say it, I will definitely help. Blanc stared at Bylin for a few seconds, and said, go to my office. Speaking of which, you are also an employee of the British Ministry of Magic. This is also an international cooperation. When he came to Blanco's office, Blanco dawdled and said, you should have heard about the Black Witch. You are right, the Spellbreaker has mastered the secret weapon and armor, ordinary wizards have no ability to resist in front of them, it is simply a one-sided massacre, just like that, many counselors still think it was an accident, and the casualties are all criminals, how stupid. Bylin said, can you tell me in detail? It's been mentioned in the news, how many guns and armor do they have? Blanco took out a stack of materials, and while Bylin was turning them over, Blanco said, the meeting of the Black Witches is in a small valley, and the Lawbreakers' assault team first bombarded the valley with mortars, and the shells knocked down no one. It caused casualties, but it destroyed the magical energy sequence in the entire small valley or something else, anyway, the wizards couldn't use apparition to escape. Then the 3 lawbreakers in silver armor led the wizards in the valley without any explanation. Attack. Blanco pointed to a photo, which showed the horrific corpse of a man who had been shot several times. This is Babu Nar, the leader of the Black Coven, with powerful magic powers, and he is also a wanted criminal by the Ministry of Magic. The revolver is smashed into a sieve. Blanco took out a transcript and said, they came and went like the wind, and they fought from one end of the valley to the other. After killing Babu Nar, they disappeared into the night without fighting. Witnesses said that there were about 15 people in total. Everyone has secret guns, which can pass through armor and body protection spells, and grenades can blow up the earth wall raised by the barrier spell. Their leader fought with Babu Nar, and Babu Nar even issued a death curse, but before the mantra was finished, he was hit in the heart. What do I need to do? Bylin asked while looking at the file. I beg you to join my investigation team and go to Egypt. Blanco solemnly said. Chapter 100. Trip to Egypt. The special investigation team of the Auror Office of the Ministry of Magic in Paris is ready to go. Most of the Aurors don't know Bylin, and they are wondering why Blanco brought an Oriental from the British Ministry of Magic. Blanco did not explain in detail, but only introduced Bylin as a special advisor, and a group of 6 people prepared all the equipment. Blanco also lent Bylin an invisibility cloak, and Bylin stuffed it into the magic cloth pocket unceremoniously. At Blanc's order, an Auror opened the intercontinental flow network and sprinkled a handful of flow powder, targeting the French embassy in Cairo. Compared with operating, the flow powder feels slightly better, but the teleportation distance is relatively long, so it is still not pleasant to say the least. Fortunately, soon, Bylin felt that his body was heavy, so he quickly adjusted his body shape and landed firmly on the Ambassador Pavilion marble floor. This is a foothold of the French Ministry of Magic in Cairo. From the outside, it looks like an ordinary office of the embassy. There is already a staff member holding a pile of clothes in the office and glaring at them. Thank you, Carrie. Blanco took the clothes from the staff and said, Gentlemen, today we are going to pretend to be tourists and visit the pyramids. According to cable reports, the Pyramid of King Unas was once a member of the Lawbreakers Association. Secret base. Bylin followed the Aurors, changed into Muggle clothes, and then put on a sun-shading hood. He looked like a group of tourists from Europe, especially Blanco, who looked a little bit different in a colorful shirt. It's very funny, but when Bylin walked on the street, he realized that many tourists from Europe or beautiful countries on the street had this slightly exaggerated appearance, but they didn't blink. The embassy invited a local teenager to be their tour guide, and the group boarded a dilapidated minibus honestly and headed for Giza in the suburbs. The slow and bumpy minibus made an Auror feel motion sick, but they were the best wizards, so they endured it. The boy's name was Abu, and he could tell that Blanco was the leader of everyone at a glance, so he approached him and said, "Sir, which pyramid are you going to visit? Do you need me to introduce you?" Blanco nodded. He also intended to let everyone know more about the information, so as to prevent some people from not reading the information at all last night. Abu was articulate and recited quite proficiently. He said, "A total of 96 ancient pyramids were discovered in Egypt, the most in Giza and Memphis. The three most famous pyramids are the Pyramid of Khufu, the Pyramid of Khafra and the Pyramid of Khafra in Giza." Listening to the young Abu's eloquent science popularization, Bai Lin looked at the streets of Cairo outside the car, and his mind was full of the previous experience. He and Catherine snuggled together, happily sightseeing along the road, and almost forgot that they were going to find Gulinga Bank. But the scenery is still the same, but he has already separated from Catherine. He still has the feeling of dreaming. It seems that Catherine is just playing a joke on him, but he tells himself rationally that maybe separation is a kind of protection for Catherine. Can he survive to the end in the confrontation with the three demon kings? No one can give him an answer. The minibus staggered for 2 full hours, and the towering pyramids approached from far to near. At this moment, Blanco said, "Let's not go to the 3 major pyramids, but first visit the Pyramid of King Unas." Abu was taken aback, and said, "Sir, the Pyramid of King Unas is not open to tourists." "Believe me, the Pyramid of Khufu is." Before Abu finished speaking, an Auror had already cast a spell on him. Abu was taken aback for a moment, and quickly recovered and said, "The Pyramid of King Unas is still 15 kilometers to the south. I'll tell the driver right away." Blanco whispered to Bai Lin, "We didn't inform the Cairo authorities of our actions, so be careful." Bai Lin nodded, and then the minibus drove for more than half an hour and stopped in the desert. Bai Lin raised his eyes and saw a severely damaged pyramid standing in the desert. There were few tourists here, and he could only walk for the last 4 or 5 kilometers. Just like that, it was thrown into the desert. Looking at the scorching sun in the sky, Bai Lin misses the ice cream in Hogsmeade or Diagon Alley quite a lot. It would be even better to have a glass of cold butter beer, but there is only sand here, and the 3 great pyramids of Giza in the distance reflect the setting sun, with beautiful golden reflections, looks mysterious and gorgeous, while their destination, the Pyramid of King Unas, is like a hill made of gravel. I didn't see how Blanco fiddled with a small device, and quickly determined the direction. "Gentlemen, follow me. Be alert." However, they did not encounter any obstacles, and quickly approached the pyramid. There were some standing stone pillars around the pyramid, with unknown runes engraved on them, showing the former glory of the place. An Auror took the lead, went to explore the way, and came back quickly. "The front door is completely sealed, I'm afraid I can't get in, forcing it open may cause a landslide." Blanco said, "There are a lot of underground buildings near here, and the information reports that there is a passage called the Persian shaft to go down. Everyone, spread out and look for it." Bai Lin did not search around like the Aurors, but came to an ancient stone pillar carved with patterns very curiously. He is not an expert in ancient characters, but he has a good memory. He even studied sketching for a year in order to go out and sketch. He was deeply impressed by these strange symbols. He had seen the patterns engraved on the Spellbreaker rune guns a few times, and soon confirmed that they were exactly the same as the symbols on these stone pillars, and should come from the same writing system. As for why these words together can have the effect of resisting magic, Bai Lin can't understand at all. This is the same as many magic circles. Why can drawing a pattern on the ground or placing a few objects have supernatural abilities? I can only talk about the characteristics of this world. According to the judge, it is the energy order that the gods created for this planet when it was born. Bai Lin was deep in thought when an Auror reported to Blanco, "Found it." Everyone was excited and quickly assembled. Bai Lin followed to see that hundreds of meters to the south of the pyramid, among the low-lying gravel, there was a very old stone building. Around the ruins, very inconspicuous. The Auror who found the stone house said, "I tracked the signs of human activities around, and there are the most traces here. Humans should often come in and out, and the width of the entrance and the shaft is enough to carry goods." "Great. Elia." Blanco patted the Auror on the shoulder and said. Bai Lin followed them downhill to the side of the stone house. It seems that the position of the stones has been changed recently to hide the entrance of the stone house. Then the block flew to the side, revealing a small black door, although not as grand as the main entrance of the pyramid, but enough to carry suitcases in and out. Another aura touched the stone wall and said, "It should be right. It was built nearly 200 years ago. It should be the entrance opened by modern people who discovered the underground building." Blanco waved his hand, "Go in."